Can you kind of list all the different people that you've worked with?
Yeah, Arman, Marvin, Lauren Murphy, Cody Garbrandt, Kamzat.
So, you worked with Kamzat. How does that work?
Well, we have a first consultation, and then we start talking about, nutrition. But it's the work that I do is boutique. I always say it's the same thing as getting a suit. I was always around people that knew how to cook. My uncle was a very good cook.
How do you prepare for something like that?
I take it day by day. I try to bring the best when it comes to cooking.
I guess the most recent one would be, with Arman.
Arman.
Dude, he looks like an actor from 300. Didn't even look like the same guy.
Yeah.
What's the first thing that you give fighters after a weight cut? Can you say what it is?
Yeah, it's a secret for me.
Is it kind of weird almost, like being in the position where you're seeing them, when they first wake up in the morning, or, what they do right before they go to bed, or like you're seeing a side of them that really nobody else sees?
I just try to act be respectful, treat them like anyone else. And I think they appreciate that.
Yeah. So. Are there any kind of funny stories from any of the fight camps or fighters that you can share or would like to?
I can tell, for example, I didn't mention him. I work with Colby Covington, one camp.
Oh, okay.
And the way he was with me personally, Marvin is, I have a crazy story with him.
Oh, really? Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, as always, it's both an honor and a pleasure to welcome my next guest to the podcast. He was born and raised in Italy. He's a performance nutritionist, a doctor of pharmacy, and the owner of CAPONUTRITION. Is that how you pronounce that right?
That's right.
The biggest thing that I can't wait to get into is that he works with a lot of top UFC, MMA, and jiu-jitsu fighters to basically give them an ability to go through weight cut camps and properly fuel their body, but also have it still taste good and not have to suffer through those things. So worked with just about everybody out there, and I can't wait to get into it. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the stage. Hope I don't butcher the name, Matteo Capodaglio. Is that close enough?
Yeah, that's perfect.
All right.
Yeah.
What's the last full book that you read?
Actually, it was an audiobook. Does that count?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I recently reread or re-listened to No Ordinary Dog.
Oh, yeah.
By Will Chesney.
Yeah.
So I was in Florida for about a month with Arman Tsarukyan, preparing for our camp against Islam Makhachev. And I was doing a lot of cooking, so the audiobook, it comes a little more handy.
Yeah.
And I really love that book. It's actually one of the books that got me closer to the dog world and even, to this podcast.
Yeah.
And I don't know, it just gave me a lot of peace of mind when I'm doing my food prepping.
Yeah. You just throw earbuds in and get after it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So quick kind of backstory, I guess, before we get any further into it. So how we met was you signed up for my Team Dog online training and then kind of found you on Instagram and followed each other there. And then I noticed what you were doing, and I'm big into UFC and MMA and grappling, and just found it fascinating what you do and kind of that world that you live in. There's so much to it. And it's, so, between, the dog that you have that you guys can't see on camera, maybe your dog will make an appearance here at some point. But just, all the stuff that you've been able to do with your dog using the training, and then just everything that you have going on professionally is super fascinating. So I appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you. My pleasure.
What's something you wish you were better at?
Well, being, how do you call it? You guys in the Navy are very good at it. Being tidy.
Oh, yeah.
Super clean.
Oh, okay. Like organized?
Organized, yeah. That's something that I noticed actually with the Navy guys. So one of my first athletes was Lauren Murphy.
Oh, yeah.
She's in the UFC. She's actually here in Houston. And her husband is in the Navy.
Oh, okay.
So the first time we did a camp together, and that was like a huge camp for me for my growth in the United States.
Yeah.
I realized how he was carrying himself.
Yeah.
And we brought some hot pots, so we were cooking in the room. We were using the room for both sleeping and cooking. Oh. So you gotta be really spot on with everything, and it was amazing. It was like, I don't know if I can ever be at that level. So
But yeah, I think to that point, the being, whether it's boot camp or on a ship or, if special operations being at like forward operating bases where you don't have much, you're crammed into a very tight spot and you're having to do a lot of the same things in one area that traditionally you may have those areas, dedicated to something else. It kind of forces you to be that way, but it's interesting. I wasn't really that way growing up. I mean, I wasn't like a total slob, but and he can walk around as much as you want. It's totally up to you. He's not bothering anybody. But the Navy for sure kind of really honed my particularity for being organized. And now, like, any clutter drives me crazy. Even if it's in drawers or whatever, it's like I constantly find myself being overbearing at home. With my kids leaving shit stuff. It drives me nuts. But if time travel were possible, where and when would you go?
Well, this is easy. It'll be either the Roman Empire.
Yeah.
Because, of course.
So you've fallen into the obsessed with the Roman Empire?
For sure. Yes. We studied that for about like at least 10 years in school. It's
really?
Like mandatory. Yeah, we study a lot of history, geography.
Yeah.
And of course, the Roman Empire is a big part of it.
Yeah.
And somehow, we'll talk about it later, but the way I saw America growing up was kind of the same way probably the Roman Empire used to be back in the days. I can see that parallelism.
Yeah.
Always loved that.
Yeah, I recently read a book called The First Principles that talks a lot about the founding fathers and beyond, but basically everybody that was instrumental and influential in the creation of America and how big of an influence Greek philosophy and the Roman Empire had on, how they structured things, whether it was, from architecture of buildings, which is very apparent in Washington, D.C., the way the military is organized, there were a lot of elements of those historical parallels to the Roman Empire and, Greeks before that. But it's fascinating. It is interesting, I think that so many men nowadays have become kind of reintroduced and fascinated with the Roman Empire and that time period. It's stood the test of time, and it's amazing how many people are really heavy into it.
Yeah. But do you have a favorite, character or emperor from the Roman Empire?
To me, it's hard not to go with Marcus Aurelius. Because of the influence for like Meditations as an example. There's so many just brilliant lessons from that, and to me, what's fascinating is that it was never meant for other people. Like, it was more of a diary of his that he was really just kind of going through his own thoughts, and at least that's my understanding. He spent a lot more time studying it, but to me, that's part of why I think it's so fascinating and so good, is that, like, he wasn't writing it with the intention of a ton of other people reading it, and it's still that good. So, it's just like there are so many things that are so timeless in his lessons.
Hey guys, I want to take a minute to tell you about the Mic Drop Patreon, where you can get the real mic drop experience the way it's meant to be seen. You get completely uncensored, unfiltered, and uncut episodes with nothing held back, just raw, real conversations directly from me to you, without YouTube censorship. Plus, you'll see it days before anyone else, with early premieres and exclusive bonus content that you won't find anywhere else. You get behind-the-scenes access to the show, including pre- and post-show footage, with me and the guest both in studio and on location, depending on what the guest is into and what we have going on. On top of that, we've got tons of Patreon-only perks, mic drop swag, access to exclusive merch, and the chance to submit your questions to be asked at the end of every episode. You'll also get a sneak peek at our upcoming guests, so you'll know who's in the studio weeks before anyone else. We're constantly releasing new features and dropping new content based on what you want to see. For our top tier members, you get the same Mic Drop Challenge coin that all of my guests receive from the upcoming show, which will never ever be for sale. We've got quarterly merch that's sent out directly to you, a monthly Zoom call with me where we talk about whatever you guys want to talk about, and an active group chat where we all shoot the shit on a daily basis. All of that for just a few bucks a month to support the show. Right now, we're also offering a 10% discount off an annual subscription, which means that you get more than a free month. I want to say thank you to everyone who has already signed up. Your support means that we get to keep bringing you the content that you love. So if you haven't yet, hit the link in the description or go to patreon.com/micdrop and join the team. I'll see you guys in there. Thank you.
Since the Civil War, dogs have stood alongside our military, proving to be indispensable partners. Our military prioritized ensuring proper canine nutrition for optimal performance, recognizing its vital role in mission success. Team Dog embodies that standard, offering science-based, customizable meal plans tailored to your dog's unique needs. Developed by a former Navy SEAL and canine trainer, Team Dog Food ensures the highest quality nutrition for our canine companions. Improve your dog's well-being. Be your dog's hero with Team Dog.
You know, Alexander the Great is a fascinating character for sure. And, but to me, Marcus Aurelius really kind of takes the cake. How about you?
I'm going to go with the old school Caius Julius Caesar.
Oh, yeah.
So,
Yeah.
It was a big one. I read both about the, how do you say, in Latin is the Bello Gallico. So it will be the war against what is now France. And then also the Civil War.
Yeah.
It was a long time ago, but it was great.
Yeah.
I like the fact about the Roman Empire that when they will expand, they will give people that they conquered the opportunity of being part of the empire, rather than just like destroy them. And somehow I feel like it's what America did, and made it the great country that it is.
Yeah.
So it's like it doesn't really conquer other areas, but actually gets people from many different cultures to get there and give us an opportunity. And that's what I'm really.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's most people, whether they're pro-military or super patriotic, I think share in that same sentiment. There's, of course, part of our population that feels like we're conquerors and world police. And, there is a fine line between those two things. And sometimes that can be tough to navigate. I am curious, like being from Italy and growing up there, do you remember kind of a sense of generally speaking, what the Italian culture kind of thinks about America in a general sense?
Yeah, I will say, well, it's a good question. Well, first of all, if you ask the average Italian about America, they will tell you essentially about either California or New York.
Yeah.
We're not very educated about the Midwest, these places, because they're not really portrayed in the media.
Right.
So they will tell you about California life, surfing, Baywatch, or finance guys in Wall Street.
Yeah.
That's pretty much what it is about.
Yeah. I guess, if you were to say favorable or unfavorable, like, do you think the majority of Italians think of Americans as in a favorable?
Yeah, favorable.
Yeah.
Yes, for sure. We had good diplomatic relationship. Our now late Prime Minister Silvio Berlusconi was in a very good relationship with George W. Bush.
Oh, nice.
They were very close. So we'll say, favorable. And America played a huge part in helping Italy get rid of fascism.
Yeah.
So World War II, that was major help. So I'll say favorable.
Yeah, well, that's good to hear. Definitely get a little more into it when we talk about kind of growing up and school and stuff. I was just curious. Do you have a favorite quote?
I have one, yes. Larvatus prodeo. It's Latin. I think it's from how do you say in American? Descartes. We'll find the name.
Yeah.
It's a philosopher.
Oh, okay. Yeah, Descartes.
Descartes.
Yeah.
It means like I move kind of hidden. So it's like about not being loud when you make moves.
Okay.
Just that's the way I always saw it. Like try not to be the loudest in the room, but still like do the work in the background maybe, and it's gonna pay off.
It's almost kind of a tip of the cap to being humble and just working hard and keeping your mouth shut kind of thing.
Yeah, and I'm being guilty of the opposite, especially, growing up, a lot of testosterone and stuff.
Yeah.
Maybe even like professionally accomplishing some stuff. I feel like you're big time. But then sometimes it's good to be reminded that you're just one of many. And that's going back to the book that I love to read, No Ordinary Dog. It really, struck me because Chesney, it was like extremely talented Navy SEAL, but still the way he portrays himself, it's so humble.
Yeah.
So I like to see in other people the qualities that maybe I don't have or where I should be better at.
Yeah.
And I think of him, that's what I really appreciate. I can only imagine, because I've never been through like the training that you did to become a Navy SEAL buds and then to become part of the dev group.
Yeah.
But still, like, he did it and he portrayed himself. I was one of many. Yeah. They chose me for the Neptune Spear mission just because I had Cairo, which was the dog that he had. I was like, well, that's something I need to learn from. So,
yeah. He's an amazing guy. I mean, I just can't say enough good things about him. He's as good as they get for sure. So you live out in California. Do you have any type of everyday carry? Do you carry any type of weapon on you? Knife? Pasta? Killing with food?
No, I don't have a license yet. I believe I didn't grow up in a country with a big gun culture.
Yeah.
So I think I want to learn progressively to do it the right way. So I've been to the shooting range a few times with a friend of mine that is both jiu-jitsu black belt and a former Marine, and he's teaching me how to shoot properly.
Yeah, that's cool.
But I want to get those fundamentals first before, going, because I think that could be a liability rather than an asset if you don't know how to.
For sure. Yeah, I wish more people took that approach, because a lot of people, just because they can, they do. And sometimes I think you have to think just because you can doesn't necessarily mean you should, But I think that you should be able to, to America, I think, for most Americans, the Second Amendment, is as integral and important as the First Amendment. They're all important, but especially the first two, I think they kind of go hand in hand, and you don't want to see either one of them go away.
Yeah. But it's the same thing as driving.
Yeah,
there's so many people on the streets not because they have a license, they should drive. Yeah, I've seen some pretty crazy things in the American streets.
Drivers, good and bad, Italy versus America.
Oh no, there's no comparison. There's much more of an engine culture in Italy, where, say, for example, in Italy, you don't speed, you don't, take over on the right lane. It's considered like it's very bad. I think it's even illegal in America, theoretically. I don't know if
I don't know that it's illegal. Maybe it is in some places, but it's definitely it's understood. Like, it's an unwritten rule kind of thing that just, there's plenty of people that don't follow. There's certainly people that do, and I think it does vary state to state.
Yeah.
I think the drivers are a little better in Texas than they are in California.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Where I'm from in Iowa, I think they're great drivers.
Okay.
But I think it varies quite a bit.
Yeah. The only places I've seen is California. I've seen Texas. I drove just a little bit here.
Yeah.
And Florida. That was intense.
Yeah.
Very intense.
Yeah.
But we'll see. We have a little more of a engine culture. People that go slower tend to be on the right lane.
Yeah.
It's not that hard to understand. So people that want to speed, they can go on the left lane. Yeah. And there's much more awareness about motorcycle riders.
Yeah.
That's also.
There's more of them there, right?
Yeah. Much more.
Yeah.
Like scooters in the city.
Yeah. Do you see Ferraris, Lamborghinis, Ducatis all over the place, or is it about like here where it's just occasionally?
Well, actually, it depends where you are in America, but I will say I've seen many more Ferrari, Lamborghinis in around Beverly Hills than in Italy.
Sure. That's fine. Yeah, that's wild. We talked a little bit before we started. You said you're a pretty disciplined Jocko kind of guy. Morning routine-wise, what time do you get up, and what do the first 3 hours look like?
Well, I try to wake up as late as I can. So, but still, I don't have an alarm. I never wake up later than 6.
Yeah.
That's the latest. Usually it's between 4 and 6. So I wake up, I try to have my 7 hours of sleep at least. That gets me like on point with the energy. I don't eat first thing in the morning. I have my coffee religiously.
Yeah.
We do the mocha coffee. I don't know if you ever saw it. It's like a small tool that we have in Italy. That gives me about like 80, 100 grams of caffeine.
Yeah.
And depends on the day. So I check my the app for the waves. If the waves are good, I go surfing compatibly with the time. So now it's winter, so there's not going to be light before 6. So I cannot go early. But in the summer, I go like at 5, no problem. Or I go to jiu-jitsu. There are 6:30 a.m. class, 7 a.m. classes, and I try to do that otherwise. Or if I'm home and I'm resting, I do some breathing exercises. I was lucky. I met Laird Hamilton. I don't know, he's a race surfer. Yeah. And he taught us like some activation protocols for the morning. Yeah. So I do that. And then, of course, I have the dog. So we go on a long walk. Yeah. And then I start just working. I like to start working like around 7, 7:30. And that's what I do.
You mentioned jiu-jitsu. Did you train in Italy before you came here?
I did. I actually started, I'm one of those, I say everlasting blue belts.
Yeah.
I started training in 2012 when I was in Rome.
Yeah.
But then I relocated so many times. Every time, like I was switching academies and stuff. I don't really care about the belt, but I got the blue belt in 2017 in Milan. Then when I moved to California, I started to train at Cobrinha. We're really like spoiled in California. We have so many academies.
Yeah. High level.
Yeah. You can train with world champions everywhere.
Yeah.
So.
It is in Italy, is there not nearly the kind of selection or availability to train in good places?
Oh, and no, it's not even close. Yeah. The opportunities you get in the big cities in America for jiu-jitsu are just
tough to beat.
Yeah. Tough to beat.
I mean, it's really the same here in Dallas. I mean, there's a shitload of jiu-jitsu gyms, but there's some good, some bad, but there are a lot of, just your age class, I mean, like the gym that I go to, I mean, there's several world champions and, from different ages and belt classes. And, I mean, it's super competitive, which obviously is great. It can be pretty humbling, when there's, teenagers and, seem like kids that are giving you a run for your money because they've been training since they were 5, at a high level. But
for sure.
So you're originally from Italy. I would love to hear kind of what growing up there was like. Obviously, you can't contrast it to growing up here, but now that you've lived here for a number of years, kind of what it was like, how it was different, and just kind of synopsize what your childhood was like growing up in Italy.
I will say it was a good childhood. I come from a city called Padova. I tell American people it's very close to Venice. In fact, it is. It's, I think, 20 miles from Venice. It's a big university city. We have, I think, the second university in the world there.
Oh,
so it's pretty old, with a great med school. I come from a middle-class family. My dad was a farmer. My mom is a pharmacist. And it was good. I played, I wanted to play soccer or football as a kid, but my dad didn't let me because he didn't like the values of football. People faking, they get injured. He didn't really like that.
Yeah.
So I started swimming when I was very young. And then when I was done at 12 with swimming, I really wanted to play rugby. I always this thing.
Is it popular there?
Yes, yeah, for sure. We're part of the Six Nations, so we compete once a year against like all the other 5.
Oh, okay.
Big countries, and we have pretty good rugby culture.
Yeah.
But then rugby was too violent as a sport. Which I mean, I'm kind of grateful that I didn't play rugby because all my friends that play rugby now, they're in they have major injuries, like big pain.
Yeah.
And while I can wake up at 35, I'm like super healthy.
Yeah.
So no rugby because it was violent. Maybe my mom didn't know the sport, but I started to play water polo.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I was a big water polo player. Love water polo. That's a hell of violent sport.
Yeah. Oh, I know.
I enjoy that so much.
Well, yeah, I mean, I grew up swimming as well, competitively from the time I was 5 all through high school. And, it's interesting. We would, water polo was like a reward. Like we would play like on Fridays after practice, or like if we were tapering up to, the state championship meet or a districts or regionals or something, we may do more water polo those weeks and just kind of have fun with it. But yeah, I mean, it's a pretty brutal sport that I don't think, to me, two things. It kind of reminds me of rowing a little bit, in that for people that have no idea what it's about, they would hear rowing or water polo and kind of scoff at it. But like the guys who are really good at water polo, like their level of conditioning and comfortability in the water and their ability to swim is fucking crazy.
Yeah.
And if you had to fight somebody in the water, like a water polo player is the last motherfucker I would want to have to fight, because I mean, they're tough, but, did you, were you competitive in swimming and water polo to the point where it, like you had the prospect of going to college to play, or?
So in Italy, we don't play in college.
Oh.
You just go pro. In swimming, no. In water polo, I was okay. I could play, but we have this thing that's pretty fucked up about Italian culture, especially if your parents are, like, say, doctors, lawyers. There's this idea you cannot train a lot and be good in academics. So my mom, at that point, unfortunately, we'll talk about it later maybe, but my dad died when I was 8 years old.
Oh, I'm sorry.
But yeah, so my mom was in charge of everything. And like the idea was that I was going to become a doctor of pharmacy. So she was like, if you want to do that, you cannot train 5 days a week or 6 days a week. If you really think water polo is your thing, then you get out of school, find a job like construction, something like that, and then you can play water polo.
Oh, wow.
So, I was 15, 16, and I ended up stop playing just because it was very, very frustrating.
Yeah.
Especially if you skip those swimming days, then it's hard to compete. You're not as conditioned, so you cannot play as well as other people. So I ended up stopping it. And I don't know, maybe that put a chip on my shoulder. Yeah. And I always wanted to keep being in sports. I didn't know how. And then eventually I ended up working in sports again.
Yeah.
So yeah, we don't really have we don't have college sports. That's pretty sad. So people go straight to play with the adults when they're 18, 19.
Oh, wow.
So yeah.
At what age did you start training jiu-jitsu?
I was my last year of farm school. So I was 22, maybe 23. Yeah.
So what, from high school right into college, into pharmacy school?
Yes.
Do you have siblings?
I have one younger brother. Yeah, he's a pharmacist too.
Oh, nice.
But he's not a black sheep in the family, so he stayed. Yeah. And now he's still working in Padua as a pharmacist.
Oh, I gotcha. Guys, sleep is the most important thing in terms of recovering properly. I've tried every mattress out there, whether it's ones that you can adjust the firmness setting, ones that are supposed to be super breathable, ones that are supposed to be super soft, super firm, you name it, I've tried it. Could never find one that I slept well on until I got the Helix mattress. For me, being able to sleep well and recover not only has been challenging, but it's been something that can negatively impact my ability to do this show, to work dogs, to perform, whether it's working out, you name it. I cannot recommend the Helix brand, both as a company as well as a supporter of the Mic Drop show, enough. They've been fantastic to work with. They sent me one of their best mattresses, which is the Helix Dusk Elite. Got the king size because I do like to stretch out. And it's been an absolute game changer for a good night's sleep, waking up refreshed, being able to recover properly. Can't recommend it enough. Go to helixsleep.com/micdrop for 27% off site-wide. That's helixsleep.com/micdrop for 27% off site-wide. helixsleep.com/micdrop.
As you guys know, sleep is one of the most important aspects of good health. And, I train really hard, whether it's jiu-jitsu, weightlifting, etc. Also work hard, own several different businesses, the Warrior Dog Foundation, etc. I have found over the years that getting good sleep is more and more difficult. For me, it's predominantly waking up multiple times through the night, not being able to stay in deep sleep. Until the kind folks at Beam sent me their powder, which enabled me to be able to sleep through the night, get much more deep, restful sleep. And I'm super appreciative of them for both working with us here on the show and sending me such a great product that has been able to revolutionize my ability to recover, get better sleep, and be more productive during the day. That's why I'm so excited to talk about Beam's Dream Powder, a science-backed nighttime blend for sleep that's actually clinically shown to improve sleep and have you waking up refreshed. Everything changed when I found Dream. It's clinically shown to help improve sleep, and let me tell you, it absolutely works. I finally started sleeping through the night, waking up refreshed, not groggy. With better sleep, my energy and focus has come completely back. I felt like I could actually tackle my days instead of just getting through them. Other sleep aids can cause next-day grogginess, but Dream contains a powerful, all-natural blend of reishi, magnesium, L-theanine, apigenin, and melatonin to help you fall asleep, stay asleep, and wake up refreshed. Now, as I look ahead to 2025, I'm determined to keep this momentum going. Dream is a part of my nightly routine, and it's made all of the difference in the world. If you're like me and have struggled with sleep in the past year, there is no better way to start 2025 than with consistent, restful nights. Dream will help you feel your best every single day. The ultimate sleep refresh for the new year is to try Beam's best-selling Dream Powder and get up to 40% off with a limited time when you go to shopbeam.com/micdrop, all caps, all one word, and use the code MicDrop at checkout. That's shopbeam, BEAM.com/MicDrop, and use the code MicDrop for up to 40% off.
So once you graduated, did you go into pharmacy for a period of time before you started doing what you do now, or?
Yeah, so the story, it's pretty crazy. I was always, I would say, pretty good at school. I didn't have to spend those countless hours being on the desk, reading books, studying. And I had a lot of free time. That's what I remember from farm school. And I started to follow MMA back then.
Yeah.
And there's not really, it's not like a huge scene, MMA scene in Italy. So we had this forum called MMAmania.it. And I started to like nerd out about mixed martial arts in that forum. Just because I had a lot of free time. And so there was one day, I think there was like a huge debate in the forum. Someone was talking shit about Nick Diaz. And like, you shouldn't act like that. That's not professional. I was like, what are you talking about? Like a huge post. And the play-by-play announcer of the UFC in Italy read that post on the forum. And he reached out to me privately. And he was like, I think your ideas are very good. I'm thinking about starting this newspaper, the first newspaper that will talk about MMA in Italy. You want to take part to it? I was like, sure, I love it. And I think it was like, maybe my senior year in farm school. So I started to follow the events. And one day there was a local event in Rome, and he asked me, do you want to cover your first event? This was all pro bono, by the way. I was like, I was very excited, 23, 24 years old.
Yeah.
It's like, I can be like part of this world finally, going back to pro sports. So I went there and I started doing all the research like you do for your podcast. So there were guys in the main card that were well known in Italy, but they never end up like fighting in the UFC. But there was this like young guy who was, I think, 19 at the time. And I read the statistics, his numbers. I was like, this guy is very good. So I went to that event and no one was giving a fuck about me because I was 23, like a small young kids, not known in the world, in the MMA world. And no one was giving a damn about the other kid that was like 19, fighting maybe in the undercard, I don't remember. So we started to talk a lot, a lot of chat. What do you do? What pushed you to train abroad? Because this kid moved from Italy somewhere else to London to train. And we stayed in touch. And that kid ended up being Marvin Vettori.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So after that, I think I was really impressed by his dedication. And I told you, I had a chip on my shoulder. I wanted to be in sports, even though at that point I thought I was going to be a pharmacist. So I reached out to him and I say, hey, we're both young. No one gives a fuck about you. No one gives a fuck about me. So let's make a team.
Yeah.
And he was like, yeah, I like the idea. So we started this thing like Team Vettori. I remember I created, because I was like not properly working as a nutritionist. I was just like doing pretty much everything. I was helping with the social media. I think I created his Facebook page during like a lunch break when I graduated and I was working as a pharmacist. And we started to fight, like in local promotion. I was going pretty well. I was happy about this like newborn relationship. And then in my head, I started to think, like, this could really be like a chance to get out of like my hometown and make this like a job.
Yeah.
And so going back to your question, I decided to give it a try. I remember I had my mom in the living room and I said, Mom, listen, I know my whole life was set to become a pharmacist and run like the family pharmacy we have in Italy. But this is really like, it's not my thing. I don't particularly enjoy selling suppositories or Viagra.
Yeah. Is that the two most common drugs you're doling out?
No. There's this, yeah. I mean, it's part of the job for sure. I will say suppository, yes, many of them.
Fun.
And I said, hey, Mom, I think I'm out.
Yeah.
And like my family, my mom was like always like pretty tough growing up. So she told me, hey, if you think this is your way of doing things, like this is gonna be your path, it's good for you. Just remember, you leave, the door is closed for you.
Oh, no shit.
It's like there's no way, like no comeback.
Like even to visit or to live there?
Oh no, like to work as a pharmacist.
Oh wow.
Yeah, in the family company.
Oh shit.
It's like you can leave, just so you know, there's no way back.
Wow. So that's pretty hard ass.
Yeah. And so I was like, well, I guess we'll find out.
Yeah.
And so I quit. At that point, of course, I was a doctor of pharmacy. I moved to Milan. I took a test to skip the bachelor in nutrition. They let you do it if you have a doctorate degree. So I was admitted to the master in human nutrition. And then, I was there in Milan. I started to do jiu-jitsu a little more. It was a great gym there. Maybe like not a lot of world champions, but the camaraderie was great. I really loved it. And around that time, with Marvin, we kept winning, and we had like a big fight to prepare, and we decided to do the camp in America. Oh wow! And
was the fight in America? I think.
No, it was in Italy.
Oh, okay.
Against a British guy, but we wanted to do things right. We didn't want to leave any stone unturned.
Go.
So we said, yeah, we gotta go where the big champions are, and let me tell you. When you go on a mission, you used to go on missions, you're like very prepared. We were not prepared to come to America. Actually, the initial plan was Marvin was supposed to come to California with his friend, a strength and conditioning coach from Italy, Emanuele, that's his name. And they were supposed to stay at this guy's, Emanuele's aunt place in Pasadena. And they thought they were going to commute with public transportation to Orange County every day. Oh, wow. And, then you move to California, you realize public transportation is not the same as Italy. It's like probably it will be 6 hours on the train, like buses every day. Yep. So that was the plan initially. It was just the two of them that to come. And then the aunt at the time was getting a divorce from her husband. So they arrive and the aunt tell them, hey guys, you cannot stay here. So 24 more hours and you need to be out. I'm sorry about it. And we were all like, we didn't have money, especially because the cost of living in Italy is much lower than America. So say you work for 1 month in Italy, you can survive 10 days in America, especially in California.
Oh, wow.
So, well, I got to digress a little bit. A few months earlier, we met this guy, this American guy. He's a jiu-jitsu black belt, Jason Melli. He was in Italy because he's one of his athletes and girlfriend, Rachel Cummins, was competing in the same tournament where Marvin was competing. So we're cutting weight, being in the sauna. We met, we talked, and we kept in touch. He is a great guy, Jason. He's from the Cesar Gracie Academy. So, Nate Diaz. Yeah. Super, super good athlete. Used to run track and field in college, like a phenomenal athlete. Yeah. But yeah, so we stayed in touch. And going back to the almost homeless Marvin, he called me. I was in Milan. It's like, hey, Capo, like, we're in trouble here. We're at the Burger King and we're stuck. Like, we don't know where to go. So we don't have money to get an Airbnb. We don't have money for sure to be at a hotel. It's like, we need to find a way to survive. So I thought about Jason and I called him. And Jason was amazing with us. He picked them up because they didn't even have a car because they were under 25. So renting a car will have like crazy prices because of the insurance.
Yeah.
Picked them up, drove them down to Orange County, so closer to the gym. And yeah, he put them to sleep in his daughter room. So I always like make fun of them because Marvin, like a big guy, was sleeping on a bunk bed with the Hello Kitty blankets. And at that point, I was like, well, I guess we invaded Jason's house. Yeah. I'm going to come as well. So I booked my tickets, and like a few weeks later, I was there. I was sleeping essentially on a inflatable mattress in the living room that was deflating every night. But it's what it is, we're happy with that. We could take part to some amazing training sessions with Verdum, Vanderlei Silva, all those goats that were training at the time, because that was around 2015.
Yeah.
And then, Jason had us for 3 months. Then we went back home. We won the fight. And 1 year later, Marvin got the UFC contract. He relocated first to America. And I relocated in 2018, I think.
So at that time, when you first came and you were sleeping on the inflatable mattress, were you doing a lot of the food prep or nutrition consulting at that point, or what were you doing camp wise?
Yeah, at that point, yes. Yeah. At that point, I was helping Marvin with his nutrition. I wasn't really cooking. That happened later. Was pretty casual. But yeah, so I was in charge of that. Fun fact, and I have no problem, no shame talking about it. That camp where we put the most resources, that's probably the only time in my life where we miss weight.
Really?
But there's a story about it. So Marvin used to fight at welterweight, and he never, ever, ever did the strength and conditioning in his life. Was just like doing MMA. And he was like a big guy. Was at the time was 21, 22. So, it was in that stage where a man will grow still. Yeah. Will become they say, fill up.
Yeah.
And the idea of moving up was in the air a little bit. Marvin was very stubborn. He's like, it's still stubborn to these days. He's known to be a brickhead. And he was like, I'm going to stay, don't worry, I'm going to stay at welterweight. Then we came to America. We were broke. So we started to do grocery shopping at Walmart, buying the cheapest things, like those big, how do you say, like chicken packages.
Yeah, like bags of 10 pounds of chicken quarters and stuff.
And I don't know if it was that, but I'm telling you, the guy looked like he went through puberty again. It was all swollen. Again, I don't want to say it was because I don't have the proof. I cannot prove it. That was that.
Sure, it didn't help.
Didn't help. Yeah. And then since we wanted to do it all, we also found a strength and conditioning coach in California. And he had Marvin start doing resistance training. And it got so big, so big. And, we were like a bunch of kids, how do you say, following a dream.
Yeah.
But we didn't really have that structure. We were not professionals like we are now. And we had no mentors. I never had a mentor in that field at that point.
Right.
So, yeah, it got like so big. We made like also the rookie mistake of booking our flights like 2 days before weigh-ins. So, we didn't have time to acclimate, to get accustomed to the new time difference. That is 9 hours between Italy and the West Coast.
Right.
And honestly, we knew we were not going to make weight because it was just like very, very, very high.
Yeah.
And it's what it is, The kid was like Marvin at that point was not a welterweight anymore. Now he's a big middleweight.
Yeah.
At that point was definitely not a welterweight. Yeah. We tried, but at one point, he wasn't losing any more weight. And I called the fight. I called like I said, that's it. The guy's not going to cut anymore because there were some strange vibes. Some coaches were like, they started to go like, you're a warrior. You can do it. It's like bullshit.
How off was he?
Oh, a lot. 6 pounds.
Oh, 6.
We missed by 6 pounds.
So I assume the fight didn't go on and they didn't do a catch weight.
They did a catch weight.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Because the other guy, I think our opponent in the same event, he missed weight the event before.
Oh, okay.
So it was kind of like, I missed weight the other time. I'm gonna give you your chance to fight still. Right. We had to be under a certain weight 3 hours before the event, which we did successfully. And the fight was good for us. We knocked him out.
Oh, wow.
And then after that, like Marvin moved up to middleweight because it was it's not something doable anymore, especially with the strength and conditioning. Yeah. And he fought at middleweight once, and then he got the UFC contract. So,
yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
So during that period, did you go through any official chef training or schooling, nutritionist, anything like that? Or was it just you learned on the fly and kind of figured it out as you went? Or how did you get from where you're doing that to where now you're working with Khamzat Chimaev and Arman and, the biggest guys in the world? Because I think a lot of people would assume, that somebody that's doing what you're doing, has been through like culinary academies and, has a doctorate in nutrition and, all these different kind of certifications, which while that doesn't necessarily make you good at doing that for this application, again, just kind of, I think a natural assumption would be at that level, like that these guys are going to require, certain qualifications. Like how did you kind of bridge that gap?
Well, at the time I was like I was doing my nutrition studies. I was almost done. That was pretty easy, honestly, considering that I think farm school is much harder than nutrition school. I was doing a professional mentorship with a world-renowned nutritionist in England, Dr. Lauren Bannock. So I was he was mentoring me on that aspect. I remember I also went to England a few times, sleeping at the airport, as I remember, the funds were very little. So you had to maximize that. I remember, so say the mentorship had to be with him for 2 days. I will flight the night before to England, sleep at Stansted Airport, then early in the morning, take the first train, meet him 2 hours away from London, then do the day with him, find an Airbnb, then do the second day. Then will be too late to come back to Italy. Then so I will sleep again in the airport and then fly back. Yeah. So that was the thing. But cooking, it's a pretty interesting story. But yeah, I started just when I moved to America. I was always around people that knew how to cook. My uncle was a very good cook. He's a very good cook, but I just picked it up in America when I relocated. I really never did any school. I don't think I'm I have a friend that is a Michelin star chef. I'm definitely not at that level. Yeah, but it all the cooking part increased when I moved to America.
I am curious from the education piece of the nutrition schooling. so much of, at least here in the United States for a long time, I think as you see RFK Jr. looking to head, different departments within the government and clean house and get it to where probably it needs to be. The traditional schooling of nutrition in the United States, I don't think is very sound. I obviously can't speak for internationally, but, like whether it's the food pyramid or, saying fat is bad or steak and eggs are bad and you should be eating granola and shit like that. Did you find that, because when you're working with performance athletes at that level, like you have to know exactly what's going to work, how it's going to work. Everybody's a little different. Did you find yourself using a lot of that actual knowledge in schooling, or just getting the certification and breaking away and kind of innovating on your own specific to fight training?
Yeah, I had to learn it on my own, like reading books from experts in the fields, working with, doing the mentorship with Dr. Bannock. That was helpful. But college in Italy, at least my curriculum didn't have anything to do with sports. So it just like overall guidelines for the average.
Is there either a biggest misconception or biggest failure, I guess, within, becoming a certified nutritionist, whether it's here in the United States or abroad, that is counterproductive to what you do now? Like what's taught there that's totally wrong?
I will say, because what you learn in, spend 8 years at university, should be critical thinking. So once you have critical thinking, you can discriminate among the sources based on what you want to do, and then pick the information that you will need. So so I learned pretty easily that the guidelines for a 60-year-old sedentary woman are not the same for
20-year-old. Yeah, no doubt. What was the transition from working with Marvin into where you had your first client where they approached you, sought you out, and you went to work for them?
Well, so when that was crazy, and like speaks volumes about the fact that to me the American dream is alive. When we were in America that time in 2015, I really wanted to use my time here to the fullest. So I started to really send emails to all the experts in the sector. And I don't know if you know this guy, Dr. Andy Galpin.
Yeah. I mean, not personally, I'm familiar with him.
Okay. So I sent so many emails to him and Facebook messages. I'm like, hey, I'm no one, but I like to talk to you for a little bit and this and that. So eventually, I guess Andy was thinking, am I going to sue this guy for stalking or am I going to give him a chance?
Yeah.
So he told me like, hey, come to my office. He was teaching at the time at California State University, Fullerton. So I went there, like I said, this is what I do. This is like Marvin. It's like, he's not in the UFC yet, but he's going to be very good. I guess maybe was hit by my enthusiasm, or maybe I didn't sound totally dumb. And he told me, hey, listen, I have a class I'm teaching, lecturing now. Do you want to lecture with me?
Really?
Yeah. So, and we went to the class with people that were like just a little younger than me, or maybe even older, some of them, who knows. And we did this lecture together. We stayed in touch. So then when I relocated to America, at that time we were like talking, we're very cool with each other. And he has a huge volume of work. Now he's a superstar. Yeah. But even back then, it was like big time. And there were some athletes he couldn't work with because he didn't have the time. So he will give me those names, and I started to work pro bono. So at the beginning, I had the chance to work with Nathan Tomasello. Yeah, he's from the Ohio State University. Yeah, 4-time All-American wrestling state champion. And I had some guys, and then Laura Murphy. She was in a pretty bad spot in the UFC. I think she was pretty close to get cut. And so I started with her. She was very good to me. I started to work with her pro bono. So because you're putting your name out there, you cannot you cannot ask for money, I guess. And we had an amazing camp. She ended up fighting the only Italian female fighter we had in the UFC.
Yeah.
And we won. It was a good knockout.
Yeah.
And that was 2019. And I remember for the first time after that fight, she was so grateful. She texted me and she said, I'm going to send you some money. And that was my first check.
Gig. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow,
that was so good. She was, her and Joe, her husband, they were so nice to me. And she referred me to other people. She referred me to Augusto Mendes, Tanquinho, that was fighting MMA at the time. And he won IBJJF awards multiple times. But the only thing missing for him was the ADCC.
Yeah.
So Tanquinho hired me. We worked together. And it was a huge underdog going into ADCC 2019. We won ADCC.
Yeah.
And then, then things started to happen. He referred Mikey Musumeci.
Yeah.
And, one thing led to another.
So you've worked with him before?
With Mikey?
With Mikey?
Yeah.
And are you working with him now? Or?
Yeah. We just started again.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I think I saw on him on Joe Rogan, like he only eats pizza once a day or what? Like, how does that work?
So the thing with Mikey, he likes things his own way. And I can give you, we talk about it. So this is not to, how do you say? I don't want to talk. He's a great guy, but he likes to do things his own way.
Yeah.
So when I started to work with him, he was coming from like a ketogenic diet world, and he was struggling. He had a very hard time making weight for words. The time where he had to shave his head.
Yeah.
We started to talk, and I expressed my opinions about the ketogenic diet for performance for an athlete like him that is training with that volume. And so we gave it a try to Mediterranean diet, a little more carbohydrates.
Yeah.
And that worked wonders for him. It's just then he took it to the extreme. He started to make these small changes hey, I like to have pizza, so I want to have pizza every day. And I was like, Mikey, I don't think that's the right way to do it. But, I'm going to give you my professional opinion, but then of course you're free to do what you want. And then he created that Mikey Musumeci protocol that worked for him for a while. But now we're working, trying to get back to a more balanced diet where we have more animal protein, maybe a little less carbohydrates, at least from those sources.
Yeah. So he went all the way off the edge when you started incorporating carbs back into it. Yeah.
But I think he got hurt by that low carb diet and that weight cut that he had to do.
Yeah.
The first time he faced Bruno Malfacine in the final. Yeah. And then he had this kind of rebound. And
yeah. So when you're working with clients, I mean, is there, especially if it's say, you worked with Kamzat just leading up his last fight against Whitaker. In those camps, I mean, obviously there's a contract that you're, providing nutritional guidance and you're cooking for them and whatever. But what does happen if he says either, I don't like this, get me something else, or, hey, I know this is all I'm supposed to eat, but I'm going to go get a pint of ice cream. Is there any of that kind of headbutting, or are they usually pretty good about listening to you and doing exactly what you tell them? And what if they don't?
Well, yeah, that's a good question. I think communication is very important. So there's the science and there's the individual. I think a good coach will put together those two aspects and present you with food that will not just be nourishing or good on a performance standpoint for you, but also you like. So the likelihood of dropping out of the protocol is smaller.
Yeah.
So I try to focus a lot on that type of communication. And I like to work with people that are coachable. So there have been instances where the person was not listening. I talked to them first time, second time, But then if it's not a good fit, I just rather part ways than not being productive together. Because it's a waste of time for me, it's a waste of time and resources for them, because of course I'm not doing this for free. So.
Sure. Yeah. Can you kind of list all the different people that you've worked with, like go down the roster of fighters?
Yeah. Most recent, of course, Arman Tsarukyan. I got Kamzat, Marvin, Lauren Murphy, Cody Garbrandt, and the UFC, Edmund Shabazian. I worked for a little bit with the Giga Chikadze. I hope I'm not like letting out anyone. I got, of course, Tanquinho, Augusto Mendes, Mikey Musumeci, Andy Murasaki in Jiu-Jitsu, Dante Leon, that got the bronze in the absolute.
Yeah.
I worked for a little bit with Nicolas Merigali.
Oh, really?
Yeah. We did a few consultations together.
Well,
Oliver Taza from the Donner Death Squad. I got Nathan Tomasello. I got a guy in the NHL. Well, that's not really fighting. Got a guy that played a little bit in the NFL. I'm sure I'm like letting out some names. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So I guess can you kind of walk us through what the process is like when somebody says, hey, especially if it's like a big name like Arman or Kamzat, that they approach you, like, how does that work? Do they contact you? Is it a manager? Like, can you kind of walk us through the process?
Yeah, it really varies. Sometimes it's the athlete reaching out. Sometimes it's the manager. It really varies. So I cannot give you like a rule, but yeah.
But then I guess once you get started, what's the process?
Well, we have a first consultation. We talk. I like to take my time, go through like their history with nutrition. If they had a hard time, bad times cutting weight, some of that information is public, of course. And I ask them what they expect from our work together. And then we start talking about, nutrition, what food they like, what food they dislike, how many times they like to eat every day. And a bunch of other information. I collect everything, and then I develop and I deliver the first plan. Now, sometimes we're not like together, so I just deliver it and they take care of it. Sometimes I'm there, so I can cook directly the food. But it's the work that I do is, I would say, it's boutique. It's the same thing, I always say, it's the same thing as getting a suit. So you can go to a big, like a store, like Macy's, and you can get an Armani suit that's pre-made, and most likely it's going to be okay, for you. But it's not going to be really customized. Like what I offer is more like a tailor experience. So you come to me, I ask you what fabrics you like, what colors you like, and then I take the measurements. And I create, I don't know how it's called in the tailoring world, but I create like a beta version, and then we do the fitting, and then I make, based on how it fits, I make more changes. So I try to employ the same principles when I build the nutrition plans, the protocols. I start with something that's it's based on the anamnesis that we did, the data that I collected, and my knowledge. But then I always say it's not going to be the end point. It's going to be the starting point. So then we see how much weight they're dropping, if they need to drop weight. With that, how much they're performing in training. And I start tweaking all the variables. And day by day, we create something that's more customized.
Yeah, that makes sense. Are you doing like a significant amount of baseline testing with them, like whether it's like BMI calculations, what their weight is, what they're eating, like are you kind of gathering all that and building that in, and how do you do that? Because obviously everybody's totally different. So
yeah, well, I would say the BMI is a little better for general population. With athletes, you don't want to do that because it'll have like some weird outcomes, like very muscular people will appear as clinically obese, which of course they're not. We're very lucky because the UFC invested about $16 million in creating this facility, the UFC Performance Institute, and all the UFC athletes have full access to it for free.
Oh, wow.
So what we can do at the beginning of every camp, we can send them there. I'm in touch with like all the guys there. Charles is the head of nutrition. He's a very, very good colleague, graduated from, I think, UCLA. Anyway, and you can do like the DEXA scan. You can do bioimpedantiometry. You can do indirect calorimetry and all sorts of testing. And then, we have reports that we can read, and we can include them in the data that I collect when we have the conversation to create those initial protocols. So that's the way we go.
And I guess, what are you looking for, like when you first interview them or talk to them the first time? Like, what kind of questions are you asking them?
Well, I've tried to understand how coachable they are.
Yeah.
Because that's really like one of the main variables on, I think, the outcome of like a weight cut.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I'm trying to do. And also, the other big thing is try to understand if they come from a place of distress in relation to food, because unfortunately there's a pretty toxic cultures around the making weight process, and especially people that started to compete very early in wrestling, they might, or even jiu-jitsu, they might have some stuff to work on. I have no problem, and I use this to invite them, suggest them to see like also a therapist if that's the case.
Oh,
So
really?
I don't think, yeah, for sure. I don't think I'm qualified to take care about that part. And the work of a therapist is instrumental in many cases, especially with those people that were close or develop an eating disorder in their early ages. One of my athletes was pretty open talking about it, Andy Murasaki, and has been extremely like beneficial. And like all the athletes that are listening to this, I'll invite them to consider like that option if they feel like they're struggling.
Yeah. Are there, maybe this is an incorrect assumption, but is there a hesitancy with like the Dagestani region of folks being open to that kind of stuff?
I never worked with a Dagestan person.
Yeah, well, I guess Kamzat technically, I mean, he's from there, but then grew up in Sweden, right?
It's Chechnya.
Yeah.
So, well, I mean, I guess it's similar, but we Kamzat, we didn't have the chance to talk about that. So I cannot tell you. I have a boxing world champion also. He's from Chechnya, but he doesn't cut a lot of weight. So I didn't have the chance to get into the details of that aspect with them.
Yeah.
So I cannot really, really tell you.
So some of the people you're doing remote, right?
Yeah.
Where, but some you actually are with them, like living with them, doing all of the cooking.
Yep.
Describe what that is like, because I guess the most recent one would be, I mean, with Arman.
Arman. Yeah.
But then even before that with Kamzat, you had to go to UAE and live with them. Like, how do you prepare for something like that?
Well, I was not expecting to do that. Kamzat happened like pretty randomly. So it was 10 days before I had to leave.
Oh, wow.
So Arman, I think they were both training in Russia. They train in elevation at 2,500 meters. I don't know how many feet is that, or 7,000?
7,000 or 8,000.
Yeah. So they train in this mount, I don't remember the name, but anyway. So Arman was talking to Kamzat about me, and I guess he was interested. So it was like more like, hey, this guy needs help. Do you want to go to the UAE? I was like, okay, then down. I usually, before that, I always did I'm there for the fight week for like 3-4 days. This time I spent like a whole month. It was like a pretty unprecedented, but it was a big occasion, a big fight.
Yeah.
And then I did the same with Arman for this title fight, and unfortunately it didn't happen. How do I prepare? Just how do I say? I take it day by day.
Yeah.
I try to bring the best when it comes to cooking. Try to understand the environment around me. So of course, doing grocery shopping in the UAE is very different from doing it in America. And I try to schedule everything so the meals are there on time. There are no surprises, and I try to offer the most, boutique service I can.
Yeah. What type of stuff did you make during that camp?
The Arman or the...
well, both, I guess, but comes out and then Arman.
Well, it's a very different, was a very different scenario. Because Arman, was in Florida, was just me, Arman, and Roma Kalantarian, the boxing coach, in the house. So I was basically like cooking in the kitchen there.
Yeah.
So I was there was a much bigger selections of food. They were easy to make for 3 people. In Abu Dhabi or Dubai, we spent a part of the camp in Dubai and a part of camp in Abu Dhabi. Was different because Kamzat had a much bigger entourage and people kept coming. And I was there, so I was like, I just wanted to offer like a good service. But we went from 7 people to eventually like 15 people.
Oh, wow.
So I had to find like a single dish that had all those nutrients that I needed him to, to take. Because it's hard to make a first dish, second dish, and then the vegetables for 15 people.
Yeah.
It's like nearly impossible. I was by myself. I didn't have any assistant. So it was a good challenge. I really enjoy doing it. For sure.
Yeah. Did he ask for like some traditional stuff that he was used to, growing up, or what he's used to eating, or was he just like, just make whatever?
No, he just gave me carte blanche.
Really?
Yeah, for sure.
And obviously it went well. I mean, he was in great shape and did really well. I mean,
yeah.
Is there a level of almost kind of pissing contest between you and whoever his coaches are in terms of the workouts, like trying to figure out, how much he can eat, how much he can't eat, like if he needs to cut weight and he's not cutting it, where you guys kind of, not necessarily arguing, but where it's kind of like he's saying, hey, he can't work out anymore, or I need him to do this and this isn't going to be enough. And I mean, is there ever kind of conflict that way?
Well, I mean, I'm talking in general now, no we comes at. That's a very good question, because we, the nutritionists, dietitians, we arrived last in this world.
Yeah.
Before us, there was, of course, the boxing coach, the MMA coaches, and now, fortunately, science is coming into the sport. So, of course, these head coaches they have a big say on what's going to happen. There are some instances where there's a little bit of conflict because, of course, the head coach will think about the performance. It's the same thing that happens with strength and conditioning coaches. They think about the performance, which is great. But at the same time, we are in a sport where you need to be under a certain weight to compete. And some coaches, there are some great coaches, don't get me wrong, but some others, they just they want to do their thing. They want the athlete to be performing, and then they leave the weight cut to you,
Yeah.
And that's pretty. This is not ideal. Let's put it like this, because of course, then it's me and the athlete, maybe another teammate, that have to cut a lot of weight. So I think what I try to where I try to really get better at is communicating to the coaches in a way that they don't feel like I'm trying to take away their job, but also giving them direction, because the ultimate focus is, for the athlete to fight, but also not to go through very stressful weight cuts.
Yeah.
But it's definitely a hot topic, and a lot of work in the sport in general, I think it needs to be done, even in terms of, say, again, not just MMA, but strength and conditioning. So I know lean mass is great for performance, of course, longevity and everything. But if you carry too much lean mass, you're gonna be challenged a lot in the process of making weight. So sometimes, even if it's counterintuitive, the way to go might be try to decrease the lean mass so we make weight in a less less stressful way.
Yeah. So with that, I guess, like if you run into a scenario where the athlete has to cut a significant amount of weight in a short amount of time, what is your strategy for accomplishing that to be able to maximize nutrition and nutrients and give them enough gas in the tank to be able to actually compete while also still cutting weight? Like, do you have any go-to recipes, products, whatever, or is it just totally depends? Or
it depends a lot on the athlete, on the situation. I would say whole foods are great if someone is in a caloric deficit, because at least from a volume standpoint, they make you feel a little like more full. So that helps a little bit.
But like mostly vegetables or?
No, even like instead of say giving them just rice or pasta, you can opt for sweet potatoes, just because to get that amount of calories that pasta will have, it'll be a bigger volume.
Right.
Then, of course, we have like high quality protein and a lot of vegetables. But another thing is, and I think it's very important, and the UFC Performance Institute is also doing a great job, is talking to the guys. And if the weight cuts are too big or they're too extreme, talking to the guys about the opportunity of moving up a weight class. There's no shame in that. Unfortunately, there's this toxic culture that you need to be the lightest, compete at the lightest possible weight.
Yeah.
But sometimes they might taint your performance. So people have successfully moved up a weight class. And I know it looks like a big jump in the deep at the beginning, but of course it might be very fruitful in the long term. So I'm also trying to do that. I did that with a few fighters, and Marvin was one of them. Of course, he couldn't stay at welterweight.
Right.
He's a big guy. Now he's about 215, between 206 and 206 to 212 off season, and then we gradually go down.
Yeah.
But it's a doable cut at 84 kilos, so 185 pounds.
Yeah.
Welterweight 170. That was a lot.
Yeah. I mean, it seems like the welterweight, there seems to be big weight cuts to get down to there, but to me the lightweight weight cuts are the most shocking to me. Like seeing some of the guys who get down to 155 and what they walk around at otherwise. I mean, specifically Khabib, fuck, he walks around like my size. He's like a 200-pound guy most of the time and somehow manages to get to 155. I mean, I'm baffled at that. Like, I imagine that you've probably seen some pretty crazy weight cuts over the years of where people are doing some really drastic shit that's just really hard on them.
Yeah.
I guess, is there an emphasis, like if somebody's trying to cut a lot of weight in terms of staying hydrated, of using salts and electrolytes and really kind of pumping that up to keep them going?
Yeah, for sure. That's a good point. So the old school comes essentially from both boxing and wrestling, I will say. Talk to the old school coaches, they'll start cutting weight like early during fight week. And that, I think, it's like the scientific community agrees it's pretty bad. Mm-hmm. So actually you want to increase the water quantity at the beginning. I'm not going to get into the specifics because I'm not trying to give anyone guidelines now. I'm just telling my experience, the way I work. But you increase that at the beginning, and then the real cut happens just in the last 12, 18 hours. So you want to minimize that time where the athlete is really depleted. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, you want to make the recharge as good as you can. So you want to prioritize rehydration first, and then you're going to start introducing foods again.
Yeah. Is there a most drastic rebound that you've seen of guys that you've worked with where like the maximum amount of weight that they gained from the time they weighed in until they actually fought?
Yeah, for sure. Let me think about it.
And I guess since you've worked with, we'll use Khamzat as the closest example because Arman, I assume, didn't even make the weight, or did he? Or
no, he didn't. We didn't even almost try because he had this back issue that prevent us from actually going through the weight cut.
So Khamzat, I mean, if he's weighing in at 170, what is he fighting at? Can you say?
I cannot say, but I can tell you it's not like a big. He's not the biggest middleweight I've seen.
Yeah,
but he has a crazy strength. Like that guy.
Yeah,
you see what he did to Robert?
Oh, it's crazy. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't even make sense.
Yeah.
Do you, so like in that environment? So you're there a month. Like culturally, they're like his crew and whatever quite different from what you're used to. I imagine.
Yes.
Was that a big culture shock? Like
for sure.
Yeah.
They were very nice to me, like very, very respectful. But you need to understand they have a different like sense of humor compared to us. Like many jokes we do on everyday life, they don't do.
Really?
Yeah.
Like they don't fuck with each other?
I guess they do in their own way. I couldn't really understand because they don't even like. I mean, I don't talk Russian.
Yeah.
Nevertheless, their dialect, because I think they talk Chechenian. I don't know if that's a thing, but yeah, their dialect from their region. They were very nice to me. I couldn't understand 99% of what they were saying to each other, but like, a little bit of hand gesture, a little bit like spasiba, this stuff like thank you, this stuff. I guess, we got the job done. So,
I guess going back to the question of the biggest rebound though, like what's the most amount of weight you've seen somebody gain back after weighing in?
Well, you need to talk about percentages here because, say, 20 pounds on a middleweight will not be the same as 20 pounds on a featherweight.
Right.
Let me think. Well, Marvin gains a lot of weight. He was, I think that the numbers are out there because the California Athletic Commission publishes them. He was, I think, around a few times was around 210, and he made weight at 185. Wow. There was a big jump, but there's also one thing. So the Athletic Commission, when they record the weight, they do it when you arrive to the arena Saturday night. So as I always say, it's like if you weigh yourself early on Thanksgiving morning and late at Thanksgiving morning, you might have gained like 8 pounds easily. Yeah. So 210 is not his real weight. It's not the weight where you woke up at that morning. But 210 is.
Wow. Yeah. Are most fighters typically weighing themselves right before they actually fight, as well as the weigh-in? Like, are you keeping track of how?
Yeah, for sure.
Everybody does.
Yeah. Most people would say 99% of the athletes. Yeah.
And I assume that the answer, like most of them, is going to be it depends. Or it varies, but is there a typical time period that a fighter will eat like an actual meal before they fight? Is it 6 hours, 8 hours, 10 hours, 2 hours?
Another great question. So that's one of the situations where tailoring is important. So if we look at the science, you could have a good meal at even 3 hours before a competition. That's going to be beneficial theoretically for you. Reality, some people they don't feel like eating. Because I don't know if it's the same for you guys when you go to work, but the nerves might be like, how do you say, big? They might be major. And in those cases, you need to listen to the athlete because say you do something that's evidence-based, but the athlete cannot tolerate it. You might have an athlete throwing up after the warm-up, which is, it's not ideal. So, but I try, especially when I know an athlete, to give them food up to the time they usually leave for the arena, and that's 3 hours before. Some people are okay with having pasta. Some people might just have, say, rice cakes with a little bit of honey. Some people, some juice, orange juice, beet juice, and
Are stuff like the goos and protein bars and shit like that, are a lot of fighters not using stuff like that before?
We use them, actually. Not sponsored by anyone, so we're unbiased, but there's Vitargo is the main one. There's some product that I guess are pretty similar to it, but they have a different ratio between fructose and maltodextrin, so glucose. They might be in gel form, they might be in powder form. Some of them, they have also caffeine with them, which increases the absorption. So we use them if the athlete is okay with it, or goo, as you said, or even just honey. Sometimes does the job.
In the camps where you're kind of living with the athlete and their training staff, whatever, are you ever training with any of them? Like, do you ever?
Well, I wish I could, but unfortunately, what I'm trying to do, my priority is to give them a meal as soon as they're done training so they can maximize the recovery. So it's very hard for me to take part to those sessions. And by the way, I'll be mauled. I'll be happy, by the way, you know. Usually those guys are so skilled that if you show up on the mat, they don't want to punish you, you know, because you're putting them in a caloric deficit. Like, they're nice. But I rarely had the chance.
Yeah. I guess in the off hours with like training staff, are you able to train at all, or are you so focused on?
No, I do. I try to do what I can based on where I am. So when I was in Florida, we had a great place in Pompano Beach that was about 2 miles from the beach. So in the morning, I will do what do you guys in the military call the PT? Right? So I'll do like a run, and then I will swim, and then I'll just run back. That will do it. So during Arman camp, I did a little more aerobic training, maybe some pull-ups because there was a bar. Some other times I might just train in the hotel room, or wherever I am.
I mean, it seems like such an incredible opportunity being with, you know, the very best UFC or MMA athletes on the planet and their entire coaching staff. Like, it would drive me nuts not to, like, I'd be constantly trying to pick their brain, and, you know, it's like the day's done and maybe the athlete's asleep, like, you know, trying to get tips from them or train with them or whatever. Like, it would be hard for me not to cross that line, I think.
Yeah, I know. But you also got to work with the other athletes. So you're in camp with an athlete, but it's not that you can leave the other athlete like uncoached. So when you're off, you're also working a lot on the computer, still doing consultation calls. So, you know, you try to do what you can. I had the chance to train with Mikey.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because he lives in Vegas, so sometimes I just go there. I stay there for like one night or two. And it's easy to train with Mikey because he always trains. Like, it's crazy. Like Mike, I'm telling you, I've never seen a person, like, for example, drilling for 8 hours straight. Wow. And he does it. It's like, you don't believe it until you see it. I was talking with the Homulo Boral, another like Gracie Baja guy, and he said, he came to my academy once. He found another like jiu-jitsu nerd, and they started to do this like berimbolo thing. And, you know, and then at one point I had to go home. So I went home, had lunch, came back. They were still drilling. Wow. It's crazy. Yeah.
I mean, so does Mikey, I mean, does he train 8 hours a day? Every day? More than that sometimes?
Yeah, even more, I will say.
Wow.
It's like, it's crazy. It's, I would say of all the other, because sometimes you try to do those like freaking weird, like 3V, like those, how do you say, fusion thoughts. And you're like, who? Because I'm following the podcast, I'm reading the books, you know, Will Chesney books. So I was like, who of these guys will do very well in buds? And among the people I work with, I will say Mikey. Well, like, he's a smaller guy, but still, like, he's strong. He's strong as hell. So I think he'll do great. Like, he's good at running, very good. So I think he'll do pretty good.
How old is he now?
28, I think.
So you've actually grappled with him?
Yeah, I tried
a little bit.
Yeah.
So I have to ask, what is it like grappling with
him? You don't understand. It's like, you know, in the Matrix, you really don't realize where you are. You start like just spinning, rolling, and he gently taps you. Gently, like, very nice guy. You know, his sister, because his sister is also like a very good jiu-jitsu athlete. I think she beat Mackenzie Dern as well. They're just living another planet. I roll with MMA guys, and they're much more like, say, if you want explosive, it's a little more risky. If you want, you might get hurt a little more. The MMA guys,
so just more dynamic.
Mikey is just like gently gets closer to a position you don't even know what position is. And before you know, you're
game over. Man, that's awesome. That would be super cool to experience that at least once. You know, that'd be wild. The other thing I was going to ask, like, you know, it's such an intimate aspect of these fighters' lives, and when you're working with guys who are within the MMA community's household names, you know, the world champions, or, you know, the best guys in the world. is it kind of weird almost like being in the position where you're seeing them, you know, when they first wake up in the morning, or, you know, what they do right before they go to bed, or because, you know, the only analogy or kind of thing that I can relate to is, you know, selling personal protection dogs is kind of that same thing where it's such an intimate transaction. You know, you're in these people's houses, seeing their children, you know, what they do, again, first thing in the morning, like you're seeing a side of them that really nobody else sees. Do you ever find yourself, I guess, A, noticing that, and B, seeing anything that's surprising?
I'll say, I mean, I'm grateful of their trust, and I try to pay it back. So I'm very, like, I keep things, of course, very confidential, like I'm sure you do. But yeah, I try just to act normally the way I would with any other person.
Yeah.
And and by the way, part of my business is with the professional athletes, but I also I do a lot of consulting with, I call them recreational athletes. So people that work, I don't know, in finance, but they also do jiu-jitsu and they want some coaching.
Yeah.
And the difference is with MMA guys, we have an agreement where I can talk about, you know, the fact that I work with them, while with the executives, I don't say their names, but I had the chance to work with those people as well, and they have some pretty crazy life, intense lives.
Yeah.
I just try to act like, be respectful and treat them like anyone else, and I think they appreciate that.
Yeah.
So,
do you, like, in the cases, the last two cases with Arman and Kamzat, like, are you spending any time like hanging out with them? Like, do you shoot the shit like at the end of the day, or go out together or anything like that?
Well, Kamzat was, we were in a hotel, so we didn't have much time, shared time together. They were basically, I was giving him breakfast, I was making lunch and dinner, and we will have lunch with the rest of the team. So it was just a limited interaction, I will say. With Arman, yes, definitely. We did 8 camps together, so we spent so much time.
Yeah, so you know him really well.
Yeah, for sure. Him, his brother always comes, the coaches, and
so I guess since you brought his name up, you know, he was supposed to fight Islam just, you know, last week for the title, and injured his back. Can you, what all can you share about that?
Well, it was a major bummer because everything was going well. We had an amazing camp. It was feeling very good.
I saw pictures of him. I don't know if you posted it, or, I mean, I saw him in several different places, but I mean, he looked like a whole different man.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, would you contribute a fair bit of that to the work that you did with him, you think?
Yeah, I would say so. I like to think that.
I mean, he did. Like, he I mean, not that he looked soft or, you know, but he looked more normal, I guess, in everything leading up to it. And then seeing him in the last couple of weeks of training before the fight, I was just like, dude, he looks like an actor from 300. Like, I mean, it was just, didn't even look like the same guy.
Yeah.
Did he put weight on? Like, what was the difference?
No, I think it's also, you know, social media. So those pictures that got viral, they were taken after a sparring session. So you have the pump in the muscle, you're like sweaty, you have the light at American Top Team from above, you have a nice camera. So I'm not saying, again, it's not out of shape, but
I guess, I mean, there's still only so much of that, I mean, he still looked like he was in really, really good shape, you know, I mean, unless it was Photoshopped.
No.
You know, but I guess, did you do anything different for a title fight, like for this fight versus the other 7 times, or was it pretty routine?
Well, besides spending more time with him, I took care of all the meals. I make sure that all the ingredients were from the finest sources I could find in Florida and California later. Yeah. But besides that, it's pretty much the same. The weight was going down pretty well from the time he came. He came to America from Russia. So yeah.
Can you say how much he cuts usually from when he starts camp until?
No, I think he has public information, so I can talk about it. Usually in the last 24 hours, it will cut around 10 pounds.
Wow.
Like, depends on the camp. Sometimes it's 9, sometimes it's 11.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So is that primarily just sweating it out?
There's a first phase that's called active dehydration, where, you both sweat and you deplete the glycogen. So you will engage on some exercise. That could be the assault bike. It could be some pads, hitting pads, or like just wrestling, push pull. But the goal is to keep it very low intensity. You know, you don't want to have spikes. You don't want to like be powerful. Yeah. And that's the first part. Well, the second part is called passive dehydration. Is usually when your body is already like a little depleted, and then you utilize either the jacuzzi, the sauna, the portable sauna, but you don't have to move. Essentially, you're just there chatting the last pounds.
Yeah. What's the first thing that you give fighters after a weight cut? Does that vary too, or is it usually the same thing?
It's always the same.
Can you say what it is?
Yeah, water and electrolytes.
Yeah. Do you have a preferred electrolyte?
No, I'm gonna say no. Actually, I've used many.
Yeah.
I try to look at their concentration. It's very important to find the right volume of water you need to put them in, because you don't want to have, say, for example, what we call in chemistry an hypertonic solution that might actually sort the opposite effect.
Yeah.
Maybe give you diarrhea.
Well, yeah, it's interesting. So, like, I'll use, or I have used, like, we'll say LMNT packets. You know, like, I guess for a purpose like that, whether it's that or, and if it's different, then maybe address both of them. But whether it's rehydrating after a weight cut, or let's say, like, for me, I'll usually drink a packet's worth with 16 ounces of water first thing in the morning before I work out. Have you found that there's like a kind of a happy medium mixture wise of because one of those packets is 1,000 milligrams of sodium, and then I think it's 200 magnesium and 100 potassium, I think.
I think so, yeah.
Like, would you go off of their recommendations of one packet per 16 ounces, or do you mess with that?
Well, I think in their package, they list a range, actually. I think it's between 16 and 32 ounces.
Oh, okay. I do per 16 ounces.
I'm not 100% sure now, because I've used so many products. There's a Drip Drop, there's Catalyte from Thorne. There's so many. So I don't remember precisely.
Yeah.
That one. I will say that's a good question.
Or I guess, is there a good general rule of thumb of how many ounces per 1,000 milligrams of sodium if you're just trying to be good about it?
It's a secret for me.
That's the secret recipe.
It's a secret.
The Italian family secret recipe.
I'll say.
Yeah.
I must say.
Speaking of which, I meant to ask you earlier, is there a traditional Italian meal that, like, your family made that takes the top spot for what you like?
That's, for sure. I like the lasagna.
Yeah.
Yeah, lasagna is very good.
Do you make it way different than you typically find it here in the United States?
I would say so, yes.
Can you speak to that, or is that a family secret?
No, that I can speak it. So,
Well, give us the goods.
Well, I would say, first of all, guys, public service announcement. Olive Garden is not Italian.
Yeah. I think most people would understand and agree to that. Even the most sheltered American would probably agree with that.
Yeah.
Have you had their Alfredo sauce though?
So here's the thing. Okay, like now we're dropping the bombs. We're enlightening the audience. I get all fired up. Would you believe that in Italy we don't have Alfredo sauce?
Yeah. I knew that, which is curious. I'm curious why. Like, you don't really do a lot of cream-based sauces.
No.
It's like all tomato, right?
All tomato and olive oil.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's essentially it.
Do you not like Alfredo sauce?
Never had it.
What?
Yeah.
We got to go to Olive Garden after this. You wouldn't be caught dead in one, huh?
Yeah, that's...
You've had it, right? At least you've had Olive Garden at least once?
No.
You never had it?
No, I cannot. Like pineapple pizza.
Yeah.
I need to surrender the passport if I do. That's it. And then I still gotta get my American one, so I'll be like
shit out of luck.
Yeah, well, I will be like locked here.
Yeah.
No, jokes on the side. I would say, like, overall the say Italian American recipes are a little richer in fat, especially saturated fats, while the original Italian ones are a little like higher in monounsaturated, especially unsaturated fats like olive oil.
So it's more Mediterranean.
Yes. Yeah. So if, say, one dish that I like to do besides the lasagna is the linguine with clams. Mm-hmm. And I calculated how many calories a portion of my linguine with clams is versus, say, one of these like Italian-American recipes.
Yeah.
And it's like, say, 700 with a bunch of like carbs, essentially, against like 1,200.
Yeah.
But where the calories come from, like essentially like fat, very, very high percentage.
Well, so on that, I guess, there's so many schools of thought. If you spend any time on the internet researching, you can find claims that back up a theory, and you can find ones that, say that they disprove it. Do you subscribe to the calories are calories and it's just basic math? Or is it, because to me it seems, I guess, more logical, that, like saturated fat as an example, if you're eating a ton of fat from, say, ribeyes, but it's very clean, grass-fed, healthy, good, clean protein source. Like, let's say you take in 100 grams of fat from a meal like that versus 100 grams of fat from 2 bags of fucking potato chips. Yeah. To me, that's not 100 grams is 100 grams. Yeah. Would you agree, or is...
I will say that a calorie is a calorie, but there are so many variables in count, and sometimes they're like impossible to predict. That makes the picture like very messy. Like microbiome being one of them. There have been so many studies now where people, they're obese, they have a different microbiome compared to people that are like, say, in shape. They started to do this thing. It's not maybe the fanciest thing to talk about. It's called the fecal microbiome transplant, where they try, I don't know if it was the right word, like install, to put the microbiome of a healthy person in shape to in an obese person.
So a shit transplant.
That's what it is. Yeah.
How does that work? Like they take shit out of a healthy person and put it in like the colon, or where?
I think they need to, I don't know the details because I've never been in that sector. Yeah. I might, who knows, in the future. But they, for sure, they need to remove like old pathogens, and they need to, I think they will have to kind of create a good environment, intestinal environment in the subject that needs to have this transplant before they actually give him. I don't know, maybe we're back again to the suppository. Maybe it's in a suppository form, maybe it's through a pill.
Yeah.
I don't know the details because, again, I've never worked in the clinical scenario.
Right.
But and then I guess the new flora gets, say, situated in the colon of the person, and
that just populates.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow, that's fascinating.
They've seen that like different type of floras, intestinal floras, they can extract different amount of energies from the food.
Yeah.
It's pretty fascinating.
Yeah.
But
so kind of in that same vein, I mean, again, I know every fighter is different, depending on how much weight they have to cut and their circumstances, but is there a preferred protein source that you lean on? And do you tend to stick to leaner cuts and protein sources during a fight camp?
Well, it depends on the situation. In nutrition, there are many depends. So I will say, overall, high quality protein sources are the best. So animal protein, whey protein, egg protein, those are the preferred sources because they have all the amino acids that are like readily available. And in terms of the fat content, it depends on the meal. So if we're having like a high carb meal, we usually use lean protein. If we're having a low carb meal, we might find a cut that's a little bit higher, in fat. So it really depends on the scenario. For the recharge, since we were talking about it, it's mainly lean protein.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Will you stick with beef or do you mix it up a lot?
I mix it up.
Yeah.
There's beef. Great. I learned about American farmers. They have like great animals.
Yeah.
I have my rancher in Northern California. I get the meat.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah.
Does he, or do they subscribe to grass fed? Do they have like a very specific protocol?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I like that they're open. So I don't know. Can I give him a shout out?
Sure. Yeah.
Temple Creek, Lauren Ponce. It's not a sponsor.
Yeah.
I just met the guy. He's actually 5th generation rancher.
What was the first name?
Lauren,
No, of the creek.
Stemple Creek.
Stample?
Yes, okay, Stemple Creek Ranch.
All right. Can you order stuff online from them?
I think you can order up to a 16th of an animal.
Oh, okay.
But then after that, I think 8th, you got to go there and pick it up.
I got you.
They don't ship it, which I love to do.
Yeah.
So I like that it was very open. So I found the page and I saw it was in NorCal. So just like, 400 miles from where I live.
Yeah.
So I drove there. I saw him, talked to him. He showed me where the animals are, what they eat. And it's not just that's grass-fed. It is also, it does a regenerative agriculture.
Yeah.
So it tries to rotate, the animals to preserve the soil, which is one of the issues with modern agriculture.
Yeah.
And then he shows you like the cows. And I'm not gonna say you can pick the cows because of course it takes time to butcher it, but yeah.
Well, maybe with enough lead time you can, right?
Maybe yes. Yeah, I could.
Can you talk about any of the fighters that you've worked with favorite cheat meals?
Yeah, for sure. Well, pizza is up there.
With all of them, or
Marvin is a big pizza guy for sure. Let me see. Andy Murasaki is also world champion pizza guy.
Yeah.
What else? I'm gonna tell you something about Arman. People are so they jump to conclusions so fast. It's like he's blessed genetically or this and that. Arman doesn't like to eat how do you say cheat meals.
Oh, really?
Ever. He doesn't drink and has been doing this for the past 20 years of his life. So when you look at him and he's like that, I mean, there might be a genetic component for sure, but he's also doing the hard work. He's been doing it for a year. So it's crazy because at the beginning when we won our first fights, he came to my house. Usually I do a big dinner after a fight. And I was cooking so much food that he will not eat it. So I asked him, "You don't like it?" It's like, "No, I just like to be lean and I don't find pleasure in how do you say in America pigging out."
Oh yeah,
pigging out. So
well, yeah. I guess speaking of him, you didn't mention the back injury. What happened?
Well, yeah, I don't know. I'm trying not to disclose information he doesn't want me to, but and I know there's a lot of shit talking now on the internet, oh, he was shy, he was scared of Islam, or he didn't want to make weight. So hours before making weight, before we started the whole weight cut thing, so where he was still hydrated, his back started to hurt bad. So I went to his room, we talked, and I remember I asked him how bad it is. Tell me, 1 to 10. I think he told me 8 out of 10. And that's he's still hydrated, And of course, once you start cutting weight, it's going to get worse.
Yeah.
I think it might, and I'm not a professional in that area, but I think it's a muscular problem. There was some type of injury there.
Had it been bothering him at all prior?
No comment.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. But definitely not not the days before, So it was we got to California and he was healthy.
Yeah.
Did he have some back issues? Maybe at times, but they were he was absolutely healthy.
Yeah.
So I told him that, I asked him that how bad it was from 1 to 10, and he told me it was pretty bad. We still started the process, but after a little bit, it had a good sweat rate. So, and the amount of weight we had to cut to make weight was the same as usual.
Mm-hmm.
And it was in pain. So we called the UFC as soon as possible because, of course, it's not our intention to let anyone down, and we understand that Islam was going through the same process. And there's a huge respect between Arman and Islam, and so they came. They were very like nice to us, like very helpful. They try to understand the situation, and but then eventually that's the thing that I want all my athletes to know. It's like weight cutting is not healthy. That's period.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't matter if you're cutting like 3 pounds, 7 pounds. When you try to get down in weight by like weight cutting, you always put in your health at risk. You can do it in the safest way possible, but there is always like a degree of distress, pain that comes with it. It's kind of the same thing as buds.
Yeah.
You know, you can decide to do it probably the way you did it.
Yeah.
Like, so it's, you go through that like hell, but also you go out and drink, which is going to make it probably harder, but whatever, you choose to do it. Yeah. Or you can like do it correctly. So you go to sleep as soon as you can, try to sleep as much as you can, you eat as well as you can.
Yeah, I mean, I was only 18 going through SEAL training, so I couldn't drink anyway. But I will say the training is intense enough and long enough to where if there were any guys that I went through training with that were going out drinking, especially during the week, I sure as hell didn't see it.
Oh, okay.
You know, on the weekends, you know, on maybe a Friday or a Saturday night, you know, maybe they would.
Okay.
Some of them would.
Yeah.
But even then, not a lot. And
really?
again, it's just, yeah, I mean, it's hard enough on your body, and it's not like really anything else where, you know, it's not like an event, you know, like to compare it to fighting as an example, like, yeah, the camps are, I think a lot of athletes have commented like the camps are generally harder than the fight. You know, it's kind of like training for an Ironman or whatever, but it's like there's light at the end of the tunnel and there's a singular event, whereas Buds is 6.5 months of day in, day out, just getting the absolute shit kicked out of you.
Okay.
So, you know, it's like if you don't maximize your recovery and performance and do everything that you can to stay as healthy as possible, like you're just not going to make it.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I mean, really. I mean, yeah, again, there are guys that certainly go out during training and party, but it's not damn sure not during the week. Or again, if guys did, I didn't know any of them. You know, we're usually limping back to our rooms at 8:30 or 9 and just trying to get our shit together enough to be ready for the next day. And, you know, so maybe times have changed and maybe there's more of that now. I mean, it's been a while since I was in training, and being 18, I was pretty naive to all that shit too. So maybe there's guys listening that, you know, are like, yeah, I went out fucking 3 nights a week and, you know, snuck out at 2 a.m. or whatever. I doubt it. I mean, cause even at 18, like I said, it was all I could do to be ready for the next day, doing everything I could to preemptively prepare for it.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, desserts and snacks. Do you make desserts and snacks during fight camps?
Not really.
Not really.
No, that's not part. But yeah.
Like, will they indulge in protein bars and shakes and shit like that?
Oh, they prefer like real food.
Yeah.
I think most of them. It can be like chocolate sometimes.
Yeah.
But going back, I wanted just to say one last thing about Arman. And I'm sorry about Buds. I just maybe like listening to podcasts, I was like, I got the wrong impression. Maybe that's later when
in the SEAL teams, it's wide open.
Oh,
like,
okay.
Dudes are fucking tying it on all the time.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But that's the other thing is, so I will never put in myself in a position to like push an athlete to cut weight because it's a professional risk. They know it. Like I think I do a great job in telling them that it's a professional risk. And I mean, unless you're really like half a pound away and you know your mind is quitting, so you know you're like, they need just a little bit of support, a little bit of pep talk just to make it.
Foot in the ass.
Yeah, exactly. But in other cases like Arman's, I think it was on him to decide. And the one thing that people might not know is with Arman, in the past I've seen him being injured and still fighting.
Yeah,
like painful injuries, you know. So when you see something like that, and again, it was his choice back then. We got a great knockout that time, so, you know, ended up paying off.
Yeah.
When you see like a guy that doesn't quit, usually that tells you like, I cannot make it before even starting the process. Then I think, it's the guy's to believe.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what we all did as a team. We respected his choice. We were all like, you know, frustrated because we went from we might be world champions in 2 days to be like, now people are going to roast us on social media, but it's really not a factor that should influence your professionalism, I guess.
So do you know what's going to happen with that? I mean, will he get the next crack at it, or how does that work?
I don't think so. So Dana in the press conference after 311 said, no title shot. I think that Charles is going to get it, Oliveira, because he beat Chandler.
Mm-hmm.
And we're back in the, what do you say, back to the grinder?
Back to the grind.
The grind, yeah. So we got, grinder is another thing. No, maybe not back to the grinder. But I think, a fight that I would like will be Chandler. They already started to talk shit on X. Yeah. So that might be, I think it's a good fight for us. Yeah. Because Chandler is a big name, and we can do very well against him, and that will put us back in the title contention. Yeah. Or who knows? This is a sport where you got to be ready at all times. It's pretty cutthroat. There's no secret about it. And be ready at the right time can really be us.
Yeah. So if he ends up fighting Chandler, would that put him in contention to get another title shot, or just you don't know?
I don't know. I cannot tell you, because ultimately there's not really it's not like the playoffs in the NFL that you need to win games and you unequivocally gonna get to the Super Bowl if you win everything. It's at Dana's discretion.
Is it totally up to him?
The matchmakers also a role. So Mick Maynard, I don't remember the name of the other guy, but we'll say so. I mean, it's not a secret that Conor got away with so much stuff.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of fighters, I think, and I get that it's a business, and their decision-making process is, of course, going to be influenced by the draw. Of how many eyeballs are going to drop $80 to watch a guy fight. Like, that's of course going to play a role. I mean, why wouldn't it? I mean, it's the same thing in boxing, really. So I get it, but. Is there a weirdest thing that a fighter has ever asked you to make, or say, hey, can you make, or that they want you to make them something that you're just like, the fuck is that?
Not really, because they trust the artist.
Yeah, so they just say make whatever. Yeah, most of the time.
For sure. Yeah. Sometimes they might be, I would love to have a little more risotto instead of pasta. So I listen to them, but
Is there a favorite meal, or a meal that you like making the most, or that you've made the most throughout all of your fight camps?
Yeah, it's very simple. Pasta with tomato sauce. They love it, super light. So it's good for a recharge. It's good for a pre-fight.
No meat?
Well, then we have protein on the side.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And that will vary. It could be anything.
It will vary. Yeah. So we can do that plus mussels. So we do a lot of mussels. It's pretty good, easy to digest protein. Yeah. So that will be a good combo.
At the risk of overstepping, I mean, and obviously feel free to tell me to fuck off, but what does something like that cost? Can you say, or are you willing to share? Like, if a top level pro fighter says, hey, I want you to be my guy through the whole camp, like, what does that look like?
It depends on, really on the fighter, on how much they want me there for. So of course, say, be 1 month with you is different from being just fight week with you.
Yes. I mean, I guess, is it usually a month that they're doing the camp?
Usually it's, I arrive there on Tuesday. That's when the fight week starts. Yeah. And I leave either Saturday night or Sunday morning.
Okay. So being there for a month or longer is rare.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Obviously, it's more expensive. Yeah. Yeah. Can you say even a range of what a fight week would cost or a month would cost?
Usually, I can say it's the way I build the company, I want it to be considered as a part of their performance team. So I went with the percentages. Yeah. And in the UFC, you have show money, you have win money, and you have the bonus.
Oh, okay.
In case. So far what I work mostly with is percentages. Oh. Now, when I was going for a whole month, that number, of course, was different because of the time I was spending there. But now we will see. Once we're gonna have champions and we have millions of dollars, if percentage still works, we'll see.
Be driving around in a Ferrari before you know it, right?
Yes, we can drive together.
Yeah. Is that, do you have a favorite Italian car or bike?
Yeah. An Italian?
Yeah.
Well, for sure. Say, if you were to give me a Ferrari Scaglietti, I would
You'd be all right.
for sure. That would be right.
That'd be all right with you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Motorcycle, honestly, I have a Moto Guzzi.
Yeah.
Because my dad used to own one. So I got the same model just
Oh, that's cool.
like a few years later.
Yeah.
I like that, but I'm more of a touring guy. So I will tell you, if I had to pick one bike, regardless of those memories, I would say the BMW GS.
Yeah. The 1250.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
Well, they just, BMW just came out with their M1000 XR, which is technically a touring bike, but it has the M1000 RR liter sports bike engine in it, and it's not detuned. Like, it's a fucking monster of a bike. Yeah, it's a bad motherfucker.
It's good, especially like I'm sure you like to 65 miles per hour, maybe 67. So that
Maybe.
will do it. Maybe
In first gear, maybe.
first gear, yes.
I guess, as we kind of wrap up the fight game portion of this and get into some of the international components, are there any kind of, I guess, funny stories, cool stories, anecdotes from any of the fight camps or fighters that you can share or would like to?
There are, as a matter of fact.
All right.
That even makes me think about it. And, again, with the athletes I've been working for just a little amount of time, maybe I wouldn't feel as comfortable.
Yeah.
But actually, I knew I was going to come here, so I talked to Marvin.
Yeah.
I was like, hey, is it okay if I share some stuff? Maybe not the craziest, but like some mid-level stuff about Marvin.
Yeah.
Because, he has a strong personality.
I imagine most fighters do, no? I mean, I feel like you kind of would have to have.
Well, I can tell you, for example, I didn't mention him. I work with Colby Covington, one camp.
Oh, okay.
And the way he was with me personally, it was much different than how he...
Yeah, I can see that. I mean, it's kind of a personality.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Connor, maybe not so much. Connor seems like he's kind of that's who he is. But it seems like a lot of the guys, there's a certain element of almost like with WWE, there's the fighter personality, and then there's how they actually are.
For sure, yeah, especially nowadays.
Yeah.
Yes, because that promotion
Yeah.
plays a big part. But Marvin is like that even in real life.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Yeah. So it's not an act at all.
Yeah. So I have a crazy story with him. It was in the middle of the pandemic, so it was 2020. We had to fight. We had to fight in the first UFC event ever when they decided to reopen things, and we had this team tradition. He was living in California back then. Now he's in Florida. I was living in California, of course. And a week before the fight, we will meet at my place, and I'll cook for the team, like doing the last big recharge before we started to go through the whole wake of shenanigans. So pandemic is happening, lockdowns are happening. The George Floyd thing happens, and I used to live in West Hollywood, like by Fairfax, where all the those riots were happening. So there was a lot of police. I could literally see people that were loitering in the stores, running away in my hallway with shoes and stuff.
Oh, wow.
It was pretty intense. So what happened is I called Marvin. He was living in Orange County in Huntington Beach. I was like, hey, Marvin, listen, the situation here is pretty crazy. There's a police, so there's crazy riots, things are burning, shops are being destroyed. I don't know. Do we really want to do dinner tonight? And it's do you think I have a problem with that? For sure. He gets in his car and he picks up the coaches and he literally drives through the riots, through the all the people. And he does it he's on the right. I mean, it was not hurting anyone. And but he just drove to my place and it was probably swearing at people. They were giving him a hard time. It's hey, if the police stop me, stops me, I'm going to tell them what I'm doing. Like, I just need to have this meal, and it's very important for us as a team.
Yeah.
And he just went through the riots and came. We had a great dinner, and then we went to fight week.
Does he like get into trouble often? Like,
not as much anymore.
Yeah.
I actually asked him clearance before sharing this.
Yeah.
You will not believe it. There's after one fight, it is not even his fault, but this gives you an idea of what's the life sometimes of a UFC fighter.
yeah.
So we won a fight. It was a good win. We got the bonus. And he's having, like, I wasn't there, but he told me the story. He was having pizza with his coach, strength and conditioning coach. And like one guy just came to him and slapped him.
Really?
Like without saying anything.
Like he knew who he was?
No.
Oh, really?
I think he's a kid that saw him in television, maybe made a bet with his friends and said, yeah, you bet I'm gonna slap this UFC fighter.
Yeah.
And Marvin didn't believe it. It's like, he hit me?
Yeah.
Like, I couldn't believe it.
Did he not do anything about it?
Oh, for sure he did.
No, he did.
Yeah, it's like, but he was like, I didn't close my hands.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't do, so I slapped him, but I slapped him out of the idea of like doing it again. But then there were cameras. So when the police came, they didn't do anything to him.
Oh, really?
Rightfully so.
Yeah.
I think because, that's, how do you say, assault.
Yeah.
It's like, so he had to defend himself.
Yeah.
That was pretty crazy, which is kind of like, I mean, it's not the same thing, but something controversial happened to Arman at UFC 300. I don't know if you saw, but there's one fan that, as he was walking out to fight Charles, like he flipped him and said like, fuck you, or like something like that, a big insult. And, in America, this might be okay. In Russia, it's not.
Yeah.
Like, you cannot tell someone, like, that's what he said to me. He explained it to me. It's like, someone cannot tell you that, and you can be, like, how do you say, neutral.
Yeah.
So, Arman, like, tried to punch him. Fortunately, didn't get him because, I was going to cause a lot of damage. He got a big fine by the commission. Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like, I think like $30,000 or something like that. And he had to record theoretically an anti-bullying video to show that, he had remorse, which that was to, how do you say, to reduce the DQ.
Yeah.
I think to what, 9 months, 6 months.
Yeah.
It just waited for the time to like go by, and it didn't do the video. It's, of course, like, we're there to entertain, and you should never attack a fan. But at the same time, like, you need to think that these guys are, when they walk out to the cage, they're dialing to fight. And like, I don't want to be too dramatic, but if they could really get hurt, they could die potentially there.
Yeah. I mean, I remember hearing Khabib actually telling, not really a story, but was talking about where he grew up and how different it was, and kind of to that same lifestyle and principle, and that he's like, if you flip somebody off where I came from, like, even if you're in a grocery store, like, you just don't do it. If you did do it, you'd get in a fight, like, you'd be fighting right there in a fucking grocery store aisle or whatever. And I have mixed feelings on it. I mean, obviously, like, I don't think flipping a fighter off and telling him to go fuck himself while he's walking down, getting ready to fight is the right thing to do ever. I think it's a chicken shit move. On the same token, I do think it's also important to look at it kind of from if we go back full circle into, the Marcus Aurelius at the beginning of the interview, is that the one thing I will say about that mentality, though, is that, like, if you allow somebody else their words to control your actions, like, well now they can manipulate you.
Yeah.
Like, if you allow somebody to piss you off, like, now they own your emotions. Like, that's a very weak position to put yourself in. So while I understand, being dialed in and ready to fight, like, if all it takes is somebody saying something to you and gesturing for you to lose your fucking cool and not control your physical reaction, like, that's a bad spot to be in.
Yes.
Because the more famous you get, the more people know who you are, that, especially for something like that.
Yeah.
It's like, because there's also the people out there that it's like the ambulance chaser lawyer type of thing where it's like, hey, if I fuck with this guy enough and he snaps and punches me, it's a payday. And so there's people that'll try to push your buttons enough to get you to fucking do something, So,
no, I agree. But I think, the truth stands in the middle.
Yeah.
So say you can, it's okay. Like, I think, yes, Arman, deserve the DQ. But also you need to do something towards the fan.
Yeah.
So in soccer, we have a lot of problems with the hooligans.
Yeah.
So if you do something like that, you might be banned from seeing an event. So
I am curious, do you know if anything happened to the fan?
no, the guy didn't sue for sure. I think he tried to ask for a Conor McGregor fight tickets. And eventually he said actually was Arman's fan. Oh. It's so weird. I maybe was drunk, So again, I'm not saying that Arman did something right at all, but I think you should work on both sides,
For sure. I mean, like I said, people shouldn't do that. On the same token, if somebody does, if I'm sitting at a restaurant and somebody, even if they know who I am or not, comes up and flips me off, if I haul off and fucking try to hit them, I'm going to be in the wrong legally by that,
Yeah, for sure.
I get that that's not how it is in other parts of the world, but
that's true.
One thing we didn't talk about is why you moved to the United States. I mean, you mentioned when you did, but there was kind of a catalyst to that, correct?
Yeah, I will say so. Well, first of all, there are many people from Europe that come here because they want to have a just work opportunity. I actually saw myself living in America. I actually love living in America. I've been here for 6 years now, so that's great. This is it's a pretty interesting story. It goes back, unfortunately, to 1997 when my dad was sick. He had cancer. He had a very rare form of melanoma. And the family was trying to, holding on. But I was left unsupervised. I was 7-8 years old, a little bit more than usual. So I remember I could go through the VHS we had at home, even the one, off limits. Yeah. And my dad, there's before working as a farmer, work as a, landscaper, building roads. Yeah. And in Africa, in Rhodesia at the time, now Zimbabwe. And he wanted to keep good English. So he had this VHS with in English with subtitles of Top Gun. And that was off limit for me theoretically up to that moment, but I could just watch it. And, starting from the beginning, I got all fired up because, Danger Zone, that song, to this day is one of my first or second most played song on Spotify because, when we go at 65, 67 miles per hour on the freeway, by the ocean, and you have I have music in my helmet, just put that song and it's so great.
That's awesome.
And that's I was like, oh, this Maverick and Goose are cool guys and Iceman. So it's this can be. I was like, I like this part of the world. So I started to
that's a trip.
Look at it a little more, and then one thing led to another. Had some a pretty weird, not weird, but unusual first experiences in America. Because the first time that I came, I was staying at Jason Malley, that is in Newport Beach, Costa Mesa, which is a pretty very, very nice area of Southern California. And then the second time I came, I was obviously very motivated. It's if America looks like this, I'm for sure I want to be here. Yeah. And then after that, it was 2016. I had my first American girlfriend.
Oh, yeah?
At the time.
Was it a huge culture shock?
It was different, yeah.
I mean, how can you, I know all women are different. Yeah. The American woman there's not necessarily a specific stereotype, but what's kind of the biggest differences you see between Italian women and American women? For
well, jealousy, for sure.
In what, who?
Italian women are much more jealous.
Really?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Do you think that that's an insecurity, or where do you think that comes from?
Just part of the culture.
Really?
Yeah.
So if you were talking to another woman, you have an Italian girlfriend, she's going to be pissed. Like,
But hey, it's different. It's like, because America is different. American can be like someone from Newport Beach, can be someone from Alabama, can be someone from like Montana.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't think you can have like a stereotypical like American. So I guess it varies from person to person. What I've seen, like American people can compartmentalize things much easier than Italian. They get fired up for nothing. Like we had huge fights and for sure. Which maybe you can see a little bit in Italian Americans, the one from Jersey.
Oh yeah.
Like very strongly opinionated.
Yeah.
But so 2016, I meet this girl in Italy. She was studying her semester out, was doing an American college. So we met in Italy. And I thought it was going to be just like one of those like things.
Yeah.
Like, you know, American guy, Italian guy, American. And then, you know, everyone goes back to their country. And but then, you know, she invited me for the summer. And so, like, you know, I've been to America just once. And, I remember I arrived in New York because she was from New York. And I get to see this place. It's a neighborhood. It's called like Upper East Side. It's by Central Park.
Yeah.
I was like, I never seen anything like that. Yeah. And I just arrived. It was a Friday, I think. And she's like, you know, hurry up. Like, we're not going to be here. I'm like, what do you mean? It's like, we have this other place by the ocean. And like, we got to go there because it's the weekend. So I picked my stuff. Like, we were on the road again. And I ended up like in the Hamptons. Yeah. And I was like, damn, this is like, so I saw like Newport Beach. Yeah. I saw like New York and the Hamptons. I was like, yeah, you know, that's great.
So the textbook California and New York is all you knew of America.
That's for sure. Yeah. But then once I went to, then another time I went to Missouri. Yeah. And I saw the other part. Yeah. It was still like, still okay, but just very different. You know, I realized that those places are kind of exceptions. Yeah. But it was good.
Yeah. Are you still kind of a black sheep to your, like, are you welcome to come back home now? Is your mom still pissed about you leaving?
Well, the thing is, she was not pissed. She just wants to be, like, she has been very tough when I was growing up. Yeah. So the idea was just, hey, you're taking a risk. You don't have how do you say, in Italy we say, you don't have a parachute. Oh. So if you're going to fall, you're going to experience the effects of the fall.
Like no safety net.
Yeah. Yeah. And now, I mean, we had a pretty tumultuous relationship growing up. I think she did some very good things and some very bad things in raising us. And that's beyond the fact that she was a single mother. Yeah. Some things happened before that. Some things happened after. I would not say she was one of my biggest fans. But maybe, you know, now with like some like articles, some like maybe people like talk to her about what I do. Yeah. She's a little like more appreciative of what I do. But yeah.
Do you go home often?
No, I've been in May for a month, and it was the longest I've been since I moved. Yeah. And I've been a few days after Marvin fought in Paris. But work has been very busy because, again, the American dream is real. So, like, things are growing, like, and I'm always like, you know, business is a priority right now. And also, I have a good time in America. Yeah. I'm like, I've been in Italy for 29 years of my life, and I enjoy so much my everyday life here. That I just feel like, no, I don't want to say it's holiday, but I wake up excited.
Yeah. I mean, to me, it's refreshing and really cool to hear, you know, because, you know, America, I think, gets shit on a lot internationally. A lot of people have bad things to say. And even here in the United States, there's, you know, to me, a surprising amount of the population that seems to hate the country they live in. What would you say is the biggest difference between Italy and America that's like the most obvious?
The most obvious? Well, in America, you have a strong, I would say, willpower. You work hard. You can still make it, regardless of your regardless of what's your starting point, I will say. And maybe I have a biased point of view because I'm hanging out with like other people. Like, for example, I have a friend of mine, very good friend of mine in LA. He's actually gonna move up to NorCal in a little bit, but his same background as me, like middle class family. Probably, I don't remember if his dad was a police officer or something like that, but smart guy. So he does his bachelor, master in Italy. Then he does his. He wants to be in academics. He likes to teach. He did his doctorate at Stanford. He's a physicist. Then he did the postdoc at Caltech, and he started like to work there. And now he's gonna get into the tenure track at Stanford. So he's gonna become. And he works on essentially seismology.
Oh yeah.
So that's what he does, which in California is like...
He's an earthquake doctor.
He's an earthquake doctor. Yes, that's what he does. But what I'm trying to say is he will, like, compared to me, he would love to be back in Europe, back in Italy. But there's so much bureaucracy, there's so much, nepotism, that it'll be impossible for him to be in the position where he's now at Stanford, which is like a crazy place, like one of the best places for you as an academic, compared to like, in Italy, you should be like, I don't want to say a god, but, should be like very, very high. I always joke with him. I tell him, you're going to end up winning a Nobel Prize.
Yeah.
But you see, the great thing about America, they ended up stealing this guy from an area that will need a seismologist because Italy needs it. We have some major earthquakes. And now this guy is going to move to Stanford. He's going to become a tenured professor in a few years. He's going to start his family there. Yeah. And America is going to have that asset. The same thing for me. Yeah, I mean, I'm also in love with American culture. Yeah. So it's different. Like, I don't feel like I have even if I didn't have to work and I could live here, I would probably live here. But yeah, that's the great thing about America. Italy, it's you're much more stuck, I will say. There's still people that make it, don't get me wrong. I have friends that made it as entrepreneurs, as consultants, but
so there's way more opportunity here in the United States.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
How would you compare the United States and Italy politically? Like, and I know there's factions and elements of politics from every, sect or whatever category, but would you say that Italy kind of, from a political standpoint, leans a certain way?
No, it really depends. I mean, first of all, I'm not an expert in politics, so I'm sorry if I'm saying the experts watching the podcast, something that's not exact. But it depends really on the time. We had Silvio Berlusconi as a prime minister for a very long time. He passed away recently. Now we have Giorgia Meloni. This is also tend to be like pretty right.
Yeah.
But we also had some leftist. It's like America. It's like you have two Bush's administration, then you have two Obama's administration, and you end up having Trump.
Yeah. So it's a pretty even split.
Yeah, I would say. But in Italy, we have many parties. So it's not just two, essentially, like America. So you have left, extreme left, right, extreme right. But even within a wing, you have so many subsections.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there a cultural difference between the two that stands out as being the most significant?
Between
Italy and the United States, culturally?
But politically speaking, or?
No, just like society.
Yeah, for sure. There are many differences. I will say that the Italians are a little more aware of like life quality. There's a little more work-life balance.
Like they focus harder on it?
Yeah. It comes pretty natural. It's part of the culture. So you kind of like are raised like that. It depends also. Like it's very different, say, in a village where Marvin grew up, which is a 5,000 people village by the Austrian border, compared to, say, Milan, where people are very similar maybe to New Yorkers,
Yeah.
So that's one thing. The culture around food is very different. Well, now it's actually changing for the worse, unfortunately.
It's becoming more like America, you think?
Yeah, actually, you must know that, Domino? Domino Pizza?
Yeah.
They tried to open in Italy, actually.
Really?
They closed. Yeah, it didn't work because people are, fortunately, still sticking to like good quality artisanal pizza.
Yeah.
But Starbucks opened in Italy. And now there's a line outside of Starbucks, even though we have many boutique coffee shops.
That's wild.
But people want the American experience. I'm going to give you another example. Like, the Abercrombie and Fitch.
Yeah.
Also, you will find, at least when I was in Italy, there were lines outside of Abercrombie with people that like want a piece of the American dream.
Which is wild considering how like fashion oriented Italy is by comparison. Now that's strange.
But the good thing about America also, I think, is like in this place, like people also learn very quickly. They're very pragmatic. They have a method. So say America, at least back in the days, like a few decades ago, was known for like mass production. So America can do something in huge quantities. But now, like living here, maybe I'm just biased because I just recently relocated to America. Now you see some projects where like now quality is the priority.
Yeah.
And we were talking earlier about the Montana Knife Company. I don't know if there were many companies like that back in the days of they're starting now, but I love that, So the American maybe was not born knowing something, but is willing to do the work to know it, And the fact that it creates such a fertile soil for people to move here brings so much like cultural influence that becomes an asset. I think that's what I really like about this place.
Like I said, it's neat to hear your perspective on it because it's, growing up here, obviously while I've traveled all over the world multiple times, it's not the same as growing up somewhere else, so it's neat to hear that kind of outside perspective. From a military standpoint, do you find that people who are in the military in Italy are respected and revered the way that they are here, generally speaking?
Not even close.
Really?
Yeah.
So is it more like looked down on?
Neutral, like almost like not existing, like people don't really have an opinion. While there are some like certain people like in America, they're like say against the police. Like the relationship with the military is very very neutral. I don't know how else to say it. We unfortunately had one big tragedy in Nasiriyah.
Oh yeah.
Where like a lot of Italians died. But besides that, there's not really a Veteran Day. It's not really talk about. What is your experience with the Italian military? Do you have any?
It's limited. Yeah, I don't really have any. I was in Nasiriyah, not with any Italian soldiers, but I've worked with a lot of other, primarily special forces groups throughout all the world, but none from Italy. So I've never been there. I'd love to go, which leads me to most overrated tourist spot in Italy and the most underrated.
Well, I will say the most overrated are, all the city centers, like big city centers. So you say Milan, Florence, Venice, and Rome, especially when it comes to eating. So Americans must know that Italians are very smart people. So they create some tourist traps where you get probably like overcharged and not serve real Italian food. But they're by the big monuments,
Yes.
It's easy. So the best thing is to know an Italian or someone like wherever you go, Europe, and have them like showing you the real gems of the city. Because you might just walk like a mile and then find a real like mom and pop shop where you have like an old grandma that's giving you food for like a third of the price and you have the real experience.
Yeah.
So that will be that's what I will say is the most overrated.
But I guess as far as like actual kind of benchmark tourist spots like Sistine Chapel, Vatican, things like that, are those worth going to?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
for sure.
All of them are
Yeah.
kind of worthy of the reputation they
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah. I cannot speak against Michelangelo.
Yeah.
No, yeah, those are really, really beautiful places for sure. But underrated, I think they're like smaller villages or like small towns. They don't get the same reputation, but they're as beautiful. You might not have as many monuments, but they're very, very nice and full of attractions. Say if you go to Florence, there's Pisa with the Leaning Tower.
Yeah.
But there's also Siena, which is a very nice city by there.
Yeah.
You go to Venice, but stop in Verona, the Romeo and Juliet city, because it's also like a beautiful, beautiful place. My city, Padua, is very nice, and then a lot of places in the center of Italy. So we don't have states, we have regions.
Yeah.
So in the Umbria regions, there are so many like villages where you can just stop and walk around and see how life is.
Yeah.
Slower.
Are some of the bigger cities kind of rough safety wise?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, it can get like pretty intense. Like Milan. I live both because I got my Farm D in Rome, so I stayed 6 years there, and then I was in Milan for the 3 years before relocating.
Oh, okay.
And yeah, both places can be rough. Yeah. There's this idea that Americans have about Italy. It's all like, La Dolce Vita, the sweet life, like a movie from the 60s.
Yeah.
And yeah, there are areas that are still like that, but there's definitely the outskirts of the cities that, can be rough. Yes.
Do you think that American culture from a cinematic or like from a movie standpoint that American movies get Italy right, the way that it's portrayed?
Let me think about American movies about Italy. Which one?
Or I guess, are there any that stand out as being like, yes, that reminds me of home?
Because most mainstream movies that American made, or I guess they were made by Italians, like Fellini, the movie director, won many Oscars, but he was Italian and made movies about Italy, even though they were big in America. I would say overall, it's pretty accurate. Yeah.
Do you remember the first thing that you ate in the United States?
Yes. Allow me. I think it was tacos.
Yeah.
Yeah, because as I was telling you, the first time we came, I was totally unprepared.
Yeah.
So I made a bunch of mistakes. There was a huge strike, so I ended up like flying for 20 hours.
Yeah.
So my original flights were not happening anymore, and then I don't know for what reason they wouldn't Hertz or whatever company it was.
Yeah.
They wouldn't rent me a car because I think I had a limit on my credit card. So I ended up I was at LAX. I ended up jumping on a bus that was going to Tijuana, and I asked them, and I had no cash with me. I just had credit card. So I ended up telling them, "Hey guys, can you just leave me in Newport, Costa Mesa, where I was?" And I arrived there because we were carless. Marvin couldn't rent a car, and I think they welcomed me as hey, welcome. So I had some tacos. Yeah. Actually.
Is there a strangest thing that we eat here that from growing up in Italy that you're just like, the fuck, why would you eat that? Like peanut butter and jelly, or something that we eat here that you don't eat in Italy that's weird?
I mean, the pineapple pizza, guys.
Yes. That's the weirdest thing.
That's pretty.
I like it. I like pineapple on pizza. Yeah. I don't get the opposition to it, I guess. I mean, I understand if you don't like it, but it's like there's people that are so adamant about not putting pineapple on pizza that they're passionate about it. It's like, who gives a shit what somebody else eats? I don't know. But is there any Italian food place here in the United States that you've been to that nails it?
Yeah. I mean, there are many Italian restaurants. They're run by Italian.
Yeah.
I have my friend, Chef Matteo Capodaglio, that he runs the Massimo Bottura, which is a 3-star Michelin chef.
Is that in LA?
It's in LA, yeah. It's in Rodeo Drive. He does a very good job, but it's not like everyday Italian eating. It's more of an experience.
Right.
I think there's a guy, Evan Funky, in LA that went to Italy and studied pasta with the grandmas, like in the neighborhoods, like really being in their kitchen. Yeah. And he does a pretty good job. He has a few restaurants in LA and Las Vegas.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Would you say that the biggest misconception about Italian food from an American's perspective is the lack of cream-based sauces, or is there something more that stands out as being?
Yeah, it's the lack of just cooking with simple ingredients. There's so many extra ingredients that Italian-American cuisine puts compared to us that increases the caloric amount. Yeah, that's pretty weird. Pretty weird to many Italians like myself. And that's also one of the reasons why a lot of Americans come to Italy. They say they have a bunch of food, a lot of food, but they come home and they're lighter than when they came.
Well, I've seen the same, even like studies done on it with, there's so many more restrictions and bans on certain ingredients.
Yeah.
Products, et cetera, in Europe than there are here. That, like, I've even known people that have spent a month in Europe and same thing. They're like, I ate whatever I wanted, breads, pastas, desserts, fucking just anything and everything, and lost 7 pounds, and feel way better. It's like it really speaks to how fucked up our food supply chain is here, and a lack of oversight on the crap that gets put in.
But I think it's also another thing. So we talk about the Mediterranean diet a lot, but we don't talk enough about the Mediterranean lifestyle. So the problem with American, I understand it's rooted in the urbanistic aspect of how the city is built. Like, people just drive everywhere. In Italy, you don't realize, and you did, like, especially if you live by the city center, you end up like the day with like at least 8,000 steps, like 10,000 steps, and like you multiply that for 365 days, and you end up like you did like what, 20 marathons maybe extra compared to like someone that just drives from point A to point B. I think that's big. Social aspect is much different. And I understand, work is important. I've worked a lot since I moved to America, but also like that, like, let's get together, have a meal. It's kind of missing, and that also is important for people well-being. Yeah. And it's kind of, I think it's what they call it, the French paradox. So they were not, I don't know if I'm like spot on with this. Might make mistakes now, so I apologize in advance, but they study an area of France where people were drinking wine, but they were living longer, even though we know that wine is not like good for your health. Like, you can tell yourself the lie about resveratrol and antioxidant, but the ethanol outweighs those. But then, the act of meeting, being together with other people, like sharing, that might have a bigger effect than the cons of, alcohol. You can still meet without alcohol, and that probably would be even better. But
I mean, the social aspect and stress and those things play a much bigger role than I think people realize, for overall health. But can you walk into an Italian restaurant here without even trying the food and get a good idea if it's legit or not?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yes.
There's an Italian place right around the corner from my house that I'd like to take you in just to go in and see what you think of it.
Yeah, we can do it.
I've never been to Italy, so I can't speak to super authentic Italian food, but I will say it's a little mom and pop joint, and everything that I've had there is phenomenal. But I'm curious to see what you think. So we're going to stop by there. Also, for the Patreon folks and anybody watching that wants to join Patreon to get access to this content, I'm in for a huge treat tonight. Matteo has been kind enough to go grocery shopping at this place called Italy, which has some pretty authentic Italian products and ingredients and stuff. Got a full a couple sacks of groceries, brought it to the house, already started some stuff that's cooking right now, and is going to spend like 4 hours in my kitchen making a badass traditional Italian meal. I'm going to document a good part of that on Patreon and post it in Patreon for you guys to see. So if you want to check that whole process out and the finished product, and join the Patreon page. Is there anything that I haven't asked you that I should have?
Let me think about it.
Or that you'd like to share?
No, we got some good stories.
Yeah.
Again, I'm like really enjoy these American dreams.
Yeah.
I've been like enjoying this podcast for many months before being invited, which I'm very grateful.
Oh, it's awesome.
So yeah, I'm just I love it. Thanks for also the dog stuff.
Oh yeah,
that has been helpful. We didn't talk about that, but I ended up finding this dog. You cannot see him, but he used to be a stray dog in LA, and the goal was just to put him like right because he was limping a little bit, and then give it to a rescue. But then the story. They started to like follow me around the house. It's very trainable.
Yeah.
And ended up being like my buddy.
Yeah.
So I adopted him. And even though my dad used to have dogs, we used to have a German Shepherd that was more of an outside dog,
Yeah.
I never had a dog. I always wanted one.
Yeah.
And I always told my mom, the thing that parent will tell you, like, you're not going to take care of the dog.
Yeah.
So then when I could, I just, I got him. I wasn't expecting him. And I love the way that, again, not a sponsor, but I really love the way the portal you created was made, especially in relation to the childhood that I had. I mentioned that a little bit. But my mom was very, very tough. In a way, some people, like, they just beat the dog. Mm-hmm. And the dog ends up listening to them. But it's not a healthy relationship.
Yeah.
And, growing up like that, like, it's not just enough, like, physically and psychologically, because, of course, we communicate different than animals.
Yeah.
I was like, this is good. Like, this is really what I would have wanted as a kid.
Yeah.
And what I want to be as a dog, as a dog owner, a handler, and maybe one day as a father. So seeing how the creation of a bond of that trust, before incurring any punishment is important. That was like a real game changer. Somehow also influenced the way, like, I communicate with the athletes.
Yeah.
Like, of course, I don't have a clicker.
Yeah.
But
the principles are the exact same.
Yeah.
I mean, it's, and I appreciate you saying that. I mean, to me, it's the whole reason I did it. And it's very rewarding for me to hear, that's how we met was, you signing up for the training and using it and seeing the results in the dog and how good he is and how well behaved. And yeah, it's super, super validating and rewarding for me to hear that. So I appreciate it.
That's what I was saying. That was great. Is like we had some huge progress. So we started with him like being scared essentially of everything. I think someone was beating him.
Yeah.
When we found him on the street, he's still like very, very scared with some man. So I think my guess is someone was beating him. But we start to build in on that and that confidence. It will, like, at the beginning, it was just squatting while it was pinned.
Yeah.
Now it's like raising the leg. That was a major like conquer. Yeah. And of course, all the obedience. Now, like, I'm actually teaching him specific tasks. I actually brought him to fight weeks.
Oh, really?
With me. We got him, I got him the command is called coperta. In Italy means, how do you say, like blanket.
Oh, yeah.
So when like a fighter is cutting weight, like some of them, because of course that's something you need to check in with the fighter before you bring the dog to fight week. But some of them, like Jacques, I didn't mention her. Sorry, I didn't mention her for the whole. Jacqueline Amorim, she's also like a UFC athlete of mine. She loves dogs. She has, with her husband, they have a Kangal.
Oh, really?
And a Frenchie. What a couple.
That's a nice mix.
But anyway, So he knows the command, the coperta, blanket. So when the fighter is laying and is like sweating, he puts his face on the fighters to kind of give like, I don't know if you can call it that pressure therapy.
Yeah.
But yeah, he has been amazing. He definitely has some, I think he's a mix like Labrador Retriever, and he might have some Shepherd.
Yeah. It looks like you might have some Ridgeback in him almost.
That's what I thought about it. I didn't never grew like that size though.
But well, it depends on what they're mixed with. But
yeah,
I've got a Lab Pyrenees mix at home right now that just doing for online content, like a puppy program kind of thing that we'll be releasing here soon. But the Pyrenees side of the parents of the dog is fucking huge. Like well over 100 pounds, and the Lab's not small.
Yeah.
But I don't think he'll break 60 pounds, you know? So sometimes it just shakes out that way. Yeah. But that's super fascinating. I did want to ask, like in Italy, from your experience, is the way people have dogs in Italy vastly different than here, or is it pretty similar?
No, I would say both Italy and America have very friendly dog policies. Yeah. What's different is the training. Of course, we're for balance training, right? So we're going to use all the 4 quadrants. Then it depends a lot on the dog. But in Italy is very, how do you say, wary, maybe that's the right word, for like tools. So it's illegal to have a prong collar. It's illegal to have a e-collar, even though, if you use it right.
Yeah.
It's a great tool, but for sure there were some assholes that misuse it. And
yeah, I mean, to me that's such a backwards policy, though, because I get the intention behind it, and like with a lot of things, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. Yeah. But like you can be cruel with a flat collar, you can be cruel with your hands.
Yeah,
you can be cruel with withholding water. You can be cruel with leaving them outside. I mean, there's a lot of things you can do that are worse than, jerking a dog off of his feet, with a prong collar, that have nothing to do with those tools. Your treatment of the dog, generally speaking, is going to be much more impactful. And I agree. Like, it's a big reason why I started the training program online that I did is, seeing people with very imbalanced training, and it does depend completely, on the dog, and it varies dog to dog, but you should always start by building a good trust-based relationship and building off of that. Because just like with a spouse, a coach with his athletes, teacher with students, a business owner with employees, if there isn't trust there, like I don't care how much training you do, if your dog doesn't trust you, you're going to be limited. So
for sure,
like you got to have that first.
Yeah, I have a question for you actually, because I'm a fan of the work you do with special forces dogs. Would you ever be able to train a dog like Cairo without like a prong collar, kind of e-collar?
Yeah, for sure.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, what I would say is, using compulsion in super high drive dogs it is common, and I would say in some cases, I mean, I hate to use the word necessary because it's all kind of relative. I mean, what I would say is that if you have the time, the patience, the competency, and the flexibility / luxury to take as much time as you need to use only positive means, there are some dogs, and I'm going to caveat that with some, not all, that are that caliber of dog that you could reach that level of control and training without using any compulsion. Mm-hmm. There are some that, and this is just my opinion, there's people out there that would disagree and say that I don't know what I'm talking about, and that's fine. There are some dogs that I don't think that that's possible. There are some dogs that are so, I wouldn't even say dominant, but in that realm of dominance, and drive and desire to self-reward, that you have no choice but to use some sort of consequence, negative consequence, to stifle or extinguish a behavior.
Yeah.
The most common example I would use is that, my goal is always to build so many repetitions of using a positive mode of reinforcement to get what we called a conditioned response in a dog. Mm-hmm. And from a very linear and gradual, or in a linear and gradual process, get to that level of where no matter what's going on, the dog is going to pay attention and listen to me. When a dog reaches that 10 out of 10 stimulation level meaning there's an external stimuli that is making your dog react, and you're trying to now vie for that dog's attention. If the dog's desire to self-reward trumps your relationship, anything positive that you can offer, and the environment that it's in, from my perspective and experience, in with all of those boxes checked, and you've got a working dog that's a 10 out of 10 in every working category, you only have one option, and that's to use punishment.
Okay.
Again, there's people that would argue, but in my experience, the people that would argue against that are also people that I've not seen be successful with those types of dogs. Either they're pet dog trainers, they're rehabilitative trainers, they're therapy dog trainers. Maybe there's one out there. If you are, I'd love to put you in the chair and talk about it, or I would love to see you take dogs, like say from the Warrior Dog Foundation as an example. We've got a number of examples of those types of dogs that when you take their genetics, the training, the environment that they've been in, and you couple all of those things together, and then add in all of the different things that they've done real world wise, you have a combination of traits that require, in some instances, positive punishment. That's just the reality of it. And for the people that would say, well, you can still build and not have to resort to that, maybe. I'll say if it's possible, it's beyond the scope of my level of competency. But because there's an element in those dogs where, they're bred, raised, and trained to not be intimidated by or to take any shit from anybody, including a handler, to a certain level. Now, if you've got a good relationship and the dog trusts you and you're fair in your consequences, then you can usually take a dog that's even has a history of coming up the leash and biting the handler to where he won't now, because you've set the boundaries and been respectful and fair and all of those things. But there are some dogs that genetically just don't give a shit. They enjoy hurting people. They're very reactive. They're easily overstimulated. And when you combine all of those things, and it's like a pressure cooker, and that pressure's got to go somewhere, and sometimes it's coming back on you. I've even seen some dogs that will self-soothe. They'll bite themselves because they're so wound up. And like if they're back tied or in a kennel run or somewhere where they can't take it out on anything else, I've seen dogs punch holes in their own legs because they're so wound up and they have to fucking bite something and there's nothing to grab and they bite themselves, It's rare. But anyway, so, I mean, that's just my experience with it. We've taken in hundreds of dogs that were deemed so dangerous that, a military or police unit was going to euthanize them, and that's when we take them. That's a dicey fucking road to hoe, so you're dealing with kind of the deck stacked against you in that regard. That's been my experience.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's good to hear. I like what you're doing, what you're doing with the foundation. I've never been part of the military, but reading the books, I think that a guy like Cairo, I think I was very lucky to have Will and then go to his house and live the last months of his life with him. Like other guys, you essentially, you train a bunch of crazy ass dogs, but to help you. Yeah. And you just
it's such a weird dichotomy because, you're taking, again, dogs that are bred, raised, and trained to be forwardly, naturally aggressive towards human beings. Yeah. And now you're trying to control that. So just like with a UFC fighter, just being super aggressive isn't going to win a fight. For sure. You need to know when to be aggressive, but it needs to be very calculated, strategic, controlled. And it needs to be that way in a dog. You can't have a dog that's just this fucking wild animal. I mean, if that was the case, we'd use hyenas. Yeah. Have them on catch poles and just throw them in a room and shut the door and wait to stop hearing the screaming and walk in. So when you're trying to take a dog that has all of those things and funnel and control its aggression towards a specific target, And, you know, there's a lot of other dynamic shit going on. There's gunshots, there's people popping out of closets, there's, you know, kids running by, there's other operators that are shooting or tripping and falling. I mean, there's a lot of shit going on. And, you know, so I would say one of the kind of misnomers or misconceptions, maybe is a better word, is that, you know, really high level special operations or police SWAT canines are these, like, in case of war, break glass, just, you know, ass eaters that want to fucking kill everybody. And while I've certainly seen some in those units that are, that's not really the ideal, you know, because in those environments, you need a dog that can blend in with a unit, that can weave in and out of people's legs and weave in and out of operators and know who's who and be clear-headed enough and confident enough to know the difference between, you know, the good guys that are on the team and the bad guys that are on the target. And that's, you're always kind of walking that fine line of enough dog to be able to get the job done, but not so much to where it's a liability to the unit. And that's a hard thing to manage sometimes.
Yeah, for sure. Well, it's a very fascinating word. And I mean, that's a sad, I say, phenomenon that's happening. Living in LA, I don't know how's the situation here in Texas. In LA, besides working dogs, we had like a crisis with like just regular dogs. Before getting him, I was like I was already thinking about getting a dog. And that was before joining Team Dog. So probably, I don't know, now I kind of changed my mind on the adopt versus shop thing. Because, you know, I think a lot of your points make sense if you want to have like a particular type of dog.
Yeah.
But at the time I was going to the shelters in LA, they're so packed.
Yeah.
Especially after the pandemic.
Yeah, well, I mean, I've got some pretty strong opinions on, you know, the adopt, don't shop thing. And again, to me, it's one of those kind of, the road to hell is paved in good intentions. And I've posted videos about not spaying and neutering dogs, or, you know, being more particular when you're selecting a dog, and have taken a lot of shit from people that, you know, they'll comment things like, let's see, you know, how about you take all these overflow dogs in if you don't think that they should be, you know, neutered or whatever. And to me, I just think it kind of reminds me of the war on drugs. You know, is that, okay, we've been fighting this war, whether it's the war on drugs or the war on millions of, you know, stray or extra dogs that don't have homes that are packing these shelters in, throwing money at it, building more facilities, that's not solving the problem, right? Because if it would solve the problem, we've put an absurd amount of resources. Yeah. Well-intentioned, but think about it from two perspectives. Number one is that, you know, a shelter, a humane society, you know, whatever organization you're talking about, or location rather, this is something that, you know, most people aren't going to want to talk about or hear, and I think most shelters would argue and say that I'm wrong. But the reality of it is that it's not in their best interest to be empty. You know, because think about it. If every shelter was empty, what would happen? Well, the shelters would close. Yeah. Right. So while, you know, of course, they're always going to say, yeah, we want to get rid of all the dogs. But so that's the first component, is that what's their incentive? You know, because if the money dries up, now none of them have jobs, they don't exist, and whatever. And a lot of people would probably scoff at that and say, bullshit. You know, of course they want the shelters and they'd love to be out of a job. You know, I'd be careful about assuming that. Number two is that, you know, the demand, again, just like with the analogy with drugs, is that, you know, the demand is really the problem. And by that, I mean, you know, when you can get off breeding really substandard, sub-quality animals with bad nerves, horrible temperaments, you know, not clear-headed, defensive, aggressive, anxious, you know, all these different behavioral problems that you see that are just rampant in so many shelter dogs. And now these shelters take them and then they adopt them out, right? And then somebody struggles with them and sends them back, or spends their entire life running their head into the wall. Well, the reality of it is that the batch of dogs right now that are currently in shelters are in that bad spot of, they've been bred poorly, they've been handled and trained poorly. if people said, no, I'm not going to take that, like I'm going to only take this dog that has 4 generations of really solid breeding. It's a really smart, cognitively driven, well-balanced, confident, stable, temperamentally sound dog. That's the only dog I'm going to bring into my household. And I'm not going to take the $250 pit bull puppy out of the classified ads. The reason people are backyard breeding nonstop is because people are buying those dogs, right?
Yes.
And so then they have problems with them and they go to the shelter. So it's like this hamster wheel. Whereas if everybody just said, hey, I'm only going to take the dogs that are bred really, really well, you'll stop that cycle. Now, again, the shit part of that deal, if you were to actually put this in play, is that all of the dogs that are in the shelters now are basically hung out to dry because nobody's going to take them because they're bred poorly. They've been, trained improperly. But that's really the problem is that just like with drugs, again, if nobody was buying drugs, if all kids were like, fuck it, I'm not touching them. Do you think cartels are going to be, flooding the country with drugs if nobody's buying them? No. Same thing. Like if people stop adopting dogs from shelters and only buy really well-bred dogs. Now, the asterisk with that is really well-bred dogs. Just because the dog costs $4,000 and, is the latest and greatest whatever the fuck doodle or is purple with pink swirls because it's some weird hybrid, boutique dog, that doesn't mean it's a well-bred dog. It's the things that I'm talking about, the temperament, confidence, sociability, things of that nature. And so, it's a complex issue, but to just throw a bumper sticker on your car that says adopt, don't shop, like that's not solving the problem. For sure. And everybody going out and just grabbing some shitbred dog that's trying to bite their kids and fighting with the neighbor's dog and won't pay attention and is scared of its own shadow. Like, it's one of those selfish love kinds of things where like, yeah, you'll feel better about yourself. And yes, you changed the life of that dog and kept him from being euthanized. But the big picture is not getting solved by that. And if it was, it would have happened already,
Well, would you be okay with America, say, or any country having like some type of license you need to get as a dog handler before adopting one or buying one?
I don't know, man. It's, again, that's one of those, the problem I have with that is the slippery slope of, when you involve the government in deciding who's qualified, that's where I have a problem with it. And I have the same resistance to the gun stuff is that, whether it's, saying people with these qualifications can't buy guns. I mean, that's my resistance. And I think a lot of pro Second Amendment folks' resistance to anything red flag related is that as soon as you allow the government to take or require, in this case, require certification, that opens the door to adding more and more things, making it tougher and tougher, So that's the first problem. The second problem is you have to ask who is making those rules. If it's the government, well, the government has shown us for 200 and some odd years that it does a pretty poor job at just about everything in terms of managing things. So if you, who's putting the panel together that decides that these are the qualifications, these are the standards that you have to be able to display and certify on to be licensed or certified as a, dog owner, that's where, like, I just don't feel good about it, because if you have the ability to take people's dogs from them because they're not qualified, again, who's deciding that, and who gave them that authority? And once they have that authority, it's about fucking impossible to take it back from them. So I really don't like the prospect of requiring certain, certifications or proving certain levels of competency. I mean, to me, it's that old adage that America, I think, is really kind of built on, which is, with great freedom comes great responsibility.
Of course.
And I don't think that you can legislate that. I think it starts in the home and having a stable, solid, intact family where you're raising your kids right and teaching them how to be responsible. And that's a whole different, problem to tackle and conversation to have. But again, I get the intent behind it. I just don't see, I get the in theory where I don't see it is in the practical application of it being able to be done right, you know.
Then I just wish, like, say, more people were to read, say, your book. There are other very good books because, I mean, before getting a dog, it's like if you don't do the homework, you're like setting yourself for failure. And I'd be maybe I'm like a disciplined person and I got a good dog. I won the lottery in terms of the genetics.
Well, no, you for sure are. And that's really the key. I mean, you can take any of the shelter dogs and I mean, you're always going to be, just like with a UFC athlete, you know, what you're limited by is the genetic potential. Like that's going to set the stage for how high you can get or not, no matter how good of a trainer you are, no matter how much time you put in. I think it should be everybody's goal to maximize that genetic potential in the dog with whatever they're built with. But, you know, I've approached a number of shelters, trying to incorporate my online training and my book as part of the adoption process.
Okay.
And have gotten fucking nowhere with them.
Really?
You know, and to me, like, not saying that by itself is an indicator of what I'm talking about. It's of course anecdotal to one experience that I've had, or actually, you know, several, but still, to me, that should be a no-brainer. It's like, if you're charging, you know, whoever, you know, potential adopter, whatever the fee is, and I'm saying, hey, I'll do it for, you know, pennies on the dollar. We'll say $5.
Yeah.
Right. Like $5 for an unlimited subscription. Yeah. Right. That's nothing.
Nothing.
And if you build that into the fee, I mean, for that matter, like for the sake of just doing it, I would say I'll give it to them.
Yeah.
You know, and I can't get people to fucking call me back, you know? So, to me, I agree. Like, you know, one thing a shelter could do is say, and it doesn't have to be mine.
Yeah.
But, you know, it's like, hey, here's the book, read the book before you know, like take a fucking quiz on it. And like, even in my online training, I've got certification programs where you go through the training, you take a test, whatever, and it says you've successfully completed whatever. Like, make them at least prove that they did that. And okay, now you can adopt the dog. I would do it for free.
Yeah.
You know, and again, it's like the resistance for it. It's like falling on deaf ears. You know?
I didn't know about that. Never heard this story. It's crazy. It's like, I cannot imagine why they wouldn't do it. And it's not because it's a consequence that we're here talking, because I like the way you train dogs. And that's what initially like got us closer.
Yeah.
Like some basic ideas that really like drives me nuts if I think about it. Like, get a dog because of the personality rather than the appearance. Like in LA, a third of the shelter dogs are huskies.
Yeah.
And how many people should have a husky?
Yeah.
Like,
so, especially there, climate-wise. But,
yeah.
You know, so I guess, you know, to me, in thinking through it as we're talking about it, you know, your question of what do you think about, you know, licensing or certain requirements, you know, to me, you know my thoughts on that. So to me, like the workaround and the better option for that is for shelters to require something like that. Again, like take me out of the equation.
Yeah, for sure.
Let's just say it's some sort of thing where you have to go through and learn how to train a dog properly and kind of certify on it and pass a test. Then, you know, you're not having to be certified by some governing body the way that you would for, say, a concealed weapons permit. But to me, that would remove a lot of the impulse stuff.
Yeah.
The gift buying, you know, buying a dog as a gift is a pretty terrible idea. And yet you see it all the time with birthdays or Christmas or whatever. And it proves that somebody gives a shit.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, okay, well, if you can at least show that you spent 20 hours on a computer reading, studying, and passing a basic, you know, 10, 20, 50 question test, that tells me that, you know, you at least have enough skin in the game to where you give enough of a shit to do the right thing.
Yeah.
You know, to me, that's a good kind of happy medium.
It's a good starting point for sure. Almost like, also for the people that are thinking about getting a dog, I don't want to say you should be required to show proof of income.
Yeah.
That dog is going to cost money.
Well, it is. I mean, that, you know, and the weird thing with that, though, is I've seen, you know, very, very wealthy people treat their dogs pretty terribly, and homeless people giving their dogs the best life a dog could have, you know. So, you know, to me, I can see a flaw in even that, too. But, you know, I think that, you know, the idea of requiring some sort of taking a test or, you know, displaying some sort of elementary basic dog training knowledge. I think the pushback that you would get from a lot of shelters is it's hard enough for us to adopt dogs out. Like this would just deter it and make it even harder. But I would just argue, again, like obviously adopting them out to whoever will take them isn't solving the problem.
Yeah.
You know, it's a rotating door of dogs coming back. So, you know, maybe by requiring somebody, you know, puts at least a little bit of effort into it, that it would help. I don't know, but it's complex. It sucks. People get emotional about it and they start, you know, kind of personal attacks if you have a different opinion than theirs. My goal is to stop over 2,000 dogs a day being put down in the United States, which is what the number is. I mean, that's an atrocious fucking number.
Yeah.
You know, but here we are. So, well, we got off on a bit of a dog tangent as expected, I guess. But anything else you want to bring up before we wrap up?
No, actually, thanks for having me.
I do have some parting gifts for you here.
Oh, really? Thank you much.
Again, I can't thank you enough for taking the time to come here and to be gracious enough to cook an amazing meal. Again, Patreon.
We'll see you.
Oh, it'll be good.
Thank you.
No twist.
Oh, is that?
Yes, we got thanks to John Johnson and Champion Choice Silver for the mic drop belt buckle and challenge coin. So
I just need the cowboy hat and the boots.
Get you some shit kickers. Maybe we'll take you to Cavender's and get you some nice Texas boots here before I head back. But
thank you, Mike.
yeah, thank you. Appreciate it. To the listener, I hope you enjoyed it. I'm fascinated by you know, performance nutrition and the UFC fight game and combining all those things, plus coupled with his story of coming from Italy and you know, the fighters that he works with, to me is fascinating. And I think you can glean a lot of knowledge, plus, you know, the dog stuff at the end. So thank you again for coming.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Mike.
appreciate it. Hope you guys enjoyed it. If you didn't, you know, you can choke yourself. And until next time, this is Mic Drop.